Chapter 8:18. Due to the battleship in the sky and the intense explosion from the direction of the tribe, the hunters who had just left hurriedly returned. They looked at the mountain-like flying monsters in the sky in shock. The hunters hurriedly returned to the tribe. Although the people at home were still trembling in fear, there were no casualties. Seeing this, the hunters were slightly relieved. They dragged their clansmen to ask what had just happened. Dookie looked around and suddenly felt his heart sink. His good friend Rizzo was nowhere to be seen. He became anxious and asked someone. That group of people said a few words to Rizzo before taking him away. Before leaving, he told us not to be afraid and said that those people had no ill intentions. Where did they go? Dookie was furious. He did not care what Rizzo had said. He only knew that his good friend had been taken away by a group of dangerous monsters, and he could not sit by and do nothing. The villager pointed in a certain direction, and the army members did not return to the spaceship but walked into the forest. Dookie did not say anything and charged in that direction with his weapon. The hunters beside him shouted for him to stop, but he ignored them and only wanted to save his good friend from the hands of the monsters. Seeing this, the leader of the hunters was afraid that Dookie would be in danger. He hurriedly gave some instructions and chased after Dookie. The giant elves ran quickly in the forest, and Dookie recognized the footprints on the ground. After running for a while, he finally caught up with a group of army members. The players were currently chopping down trees and clearing out an empty space. They were preparing to plant a portable base expansion pack there to form a small stronghold. According to the mission requirements and the Army's instructions, the teams that came into contact with the natives had to build a base near each tribe to facilitate communication. There's a life signal. Mad Blade used his chain's word to chop down an ancient tree. At the same time, the radar detected Dookie's presence, and so did the other army members. Dookie squatted in the treetops and did not know that he had been exposed. He observed these monsters dressed in metal and immediately saw Rizzo being surrounded. The next moment, Dookie jumped down from the sky and landed not far away from Rizzo. He rolled and stood up, kicking up a cloud of dirt. He then followed his countless hunter training and stabbed the lower body of a metal monster in front of him with his spear. The wooden spear pierced the metal-covered crotch, and as expected, the wooden spear snapped. The army member who was attacked kicked out lightly, afraid that he would kill the native and cause the mission to fail. However, in Dookie's eyes, this kick was so fast that he could not react in time. He barely managed to raise his shield to block it, but an irresistible force assaulted him. Boom! The wooden shield exploded, turning into sawdust that fluttered in the air. Dookie was sent flying dozens of meters away and rolled a dozen times on the ground. His arm was in intense pain as it hung limply by his side. His chest felt stuffy, and he couldn't help but vomit out a large mouthful of gastric juice. He lay on the ground, unable to get up, and stared at the attacker with terrified eyes. "Don't kill him! He's my friend!" Rizzo hurriedly cried out. He then looked at Dookie and asked in astonishment, "What are you doing here?" Cough cough. "I'm here to save you." Dookie could barely stand up and his voice was weak. He was just a normal human being, and the fact that he did not die after being kicked by a grade C warrior was because the other party had held back 99% of his strength. I don't need you to save me. They don't have any ill intentions, and they're all my friends. You should quickly leave." Rizzo was helpless and continued to plead with the army members. During this period of time, he had already obtained a rough understanding of the situation from the army members. While there were many terms that he did not understand, it did not hinder him from confirming that these people were not enemies. Hearing Rizzo call him back, Dookie raised his head and saw that Rizzo was conversing with these people. There was no danger at all, and he did not need anyone's help at all. After receiving a reply, Rizzo's face lit up with joy. "I've helped you plead, and they've decided to let you go. You should quickly return to the tribe." I'm fine here. Just wait for my news. Don't be rash anymore. Let me go, Dookie repeated and looked up at Rizzo with a complicated expression. It was as though he had just gotten to know this good friend of his who was not liked since young. A sense of loss rose in his heart, and Dookie clenched his trembling hands into fists. He squeezed the ground, and the soil squeezed out from between his fingers. At this moment, the leader of the hunters finally arrived. He looked at the army members warily, and when he saw Dookie lying on the ground, he was shocked. Rizzo hurriedly called out to him and explained. The leader of the hunters was skeptical, but he carried Dookie, who had lost the ability to move, and ran back. Rizzo sent the two of them off and heaved a sigh of relief. The ground troops landed one after another, and came into contact with all the tribes. These battleships were like gods descending from the heavens in the eyes of the Panguru's giant elves. Their peaceful lives were broken, and all the natives felt fear and wariness toward the aliens that had descended from the heavens. According to the rules of exploration, the army would set up a stronghold near each tribe and choose one or a few representatives from each tribe to teach them how to use the translation device to convey their intentions. At the same time, Han Shao did not let the others be idle. He sent out ground troops to land at the various resource points and set up mining bases. They used all sorts of digging equipment to open up the mines. Large patches of forests were removed, and cold metal replaced them. Bases were built one after another on planet Pangurus. With a large amount of manpower and equipment, Han Shao did not need to do anything personally. He only needed to command from the main ship in the planet's orbit. Your Excellency Black Star, you discovered a resource planet with rare resources? When the dynasty's commander, Seneco, received the news, he could not help but be overjoyed. At this moment, the majority of them were conducting a full exploration of Star Zone 1, and the various teams had already arrived at their respective planet. Most of them were ordinary, and they only contained ordinary resources that were commonly seen in the universe. Their value was not high, and there were very few planets that were worth more than 6 billion anas. Planet Pangurus was the most valuable planet that they had discovered in Star Zone 1. I have already completed the information of the planet in the database. There are also native civilizations here, and my men are in contact with them, Han Shao said. Seneco pondered for a moment before saying, I see. You will be in charge of the exploration of that planet. I will send a small team over to help. According to the rules, as long as it was a planet discovered by the Black Star Corps, Han Shao would be able to temporarily share the exploration rights. If it was a resource planet discovered by the dynasty's fleet, the dynasty's allies would have limited rights to interfere. Usually, the allies would only benefit the most from the exploration of the planet. Thus, Seneco's troops were both allies and competitors. After chatting for a while, Han Shao hung up and opened the interface. Many notifications popped up from the flickering world main storyline mission. He had obtained quite a number of exploration points from discovering a resource planet and discovering a native civilization. The players who followed him to planet Pangurus had obtained the most exploration points among all the players. As the exploration progressed, more and more points would be added to their account. On the forums, the players who explored the various planets showed off their points, and when they saw the points of the players who explored planet Pangurus, they could not help but feel envious. It's still the army commander who earns the most. Sigh, it's a pity. Many of the missions that followed Black Star were taken by the large guilds, and I didn't manage to snatch any of the remaining missions. Although the players had gone to explore different planets and were divided into teams that were far apart, they could communicate and share information across distances on the forum. It was very lively. Among the players that Han Shao brought along, there were a large number of players from the club guilds. There were many professional players among them. Turning off the interface, Han Shao looked at the light spots on the map that represented the army and suddenly asked, "How's their contact with the natives? Did anyone resist?" Aurora shook her head and said, "There are more than 10,000 tribes on this planet, and the population of the Panguru's giant elves is around 10 million. Our warriors used deterrence to instill fear in them, so there are no casualties. There seems to have been some accidental deaths, but the number doesn't exceed 100. Han Xiao nodded. The natives of this planet were still in the early stages of their civilization, and their population was very small. It was still within the acceptable range that less than 100 people had died on the first contact. Get the ground troops to pacify those tribes and slowly educate them. This is only the first day, and this is a long process. Tell our people not to rush for quick result. Even if the natives resist, they will not cause us much damage. Try not to use violence against them." Although there was no resistance now, it did not mean that there would be no resistance in the future. The natives had not realized what they were going through, and there would be resistance one day. Thankfully, the natives were too weak, and their resistance was meaningless. This also protected them. Han Xiao knew that there were some native civilizations in the Renault star cluster that had barely reached the star system level. They were much harder to deal with than the Panguru's star cluster, and if the Bloodshed Land encountered them, they would be in trouble for quite some time. Educating a bunch of natives required too much time, and it would take at least a few decades to 100 years. Naturally, he would not waste so much time on a single planet. He was only laying down the foundation now, and when the dynasty's people arrived, the job of educating the natives would be handed over to the dynasty's professionals. He only needed to leave a few troops behind to mine before moving on to the next planet. The representatives of the various tribes returned to their tribes with the goodwill of the Black Star Corps, expressing that they had no intention of harming them. At the same time, they brought back food and seeds that were suitable for the climate of the planet. With the assurance of the representatives of the tribes, the Panguru's giant elves were no longer as fearful of the extraterrestrial visitors. Instead, they felt a strong sense of familiarity and curiosity. The stronghold beside every tribe had the function of a school, and it was open to the natives. Because the translator had picked up the language of the natives, they could communicate normally. Some of the braver natives took the initiative to go to the strongholds to learn. The strongholds taught them all sorts of knowledge, including agriculture and handicraft. They also gave out free seeds and food, and some of the natives returned to their tribes to try growing crop. Through learning, the various tribes also learned about the origins of the extraterrestrial visitors and the existence of the Black Star Corps and the Red Empire. The members of the army taught the natives basic knowledge of astronomy and the history of the army. The natives could not imagine that there would be such a powerful organization in the heavens that could cross the universe so easily. All of this was beyond their understanding. In their eyes, the existence of the Black Star Corps was like a miracle. In the Greenflow Forest tribe, Rousseau's days became better. After becoming the representative of the tribe to communicate with the extraterrestrial visitors, Rousseau continued to learn and bring his knowledge back to the tribe. He was extremely talented in this aspect, and under his hard work, the tribe started to communicate with the Black Star Corps more frequently, learning new things and changing their way of life. Luo Su was shocked to find that those clansmen who had looked down on him before had all become respectful towards him. In the tribe, his position had suddenly surpassed that of the chief, becoming the most respected person. Every clansman was in awe of him. The culture of the natives had not been fully formed, and they did not have the concept of abandoning their traditions. They were all attracted by the new knowledge. In the past, the tribe members respected the hunters the most. Only when the hunters brought back food would the tribe be able to eat their fill. But now, the people who were respected the most were those who went to the stronghold to learn and bring back knowledge. They brought back food and seeds, allowing everyone to eat their fill more easily. They also brought back handicraft knowledge that made their clothes more comfortable and their tents warmer. They even brought back a free weapon called a crossbow from the stronghold. With such a weapon, hunting became much easier. The hunters were the warriors of the tribe, and they had the responsibility of protecting the tribe. However, in front of the members of the army, the hunters were completely helpless. The tribe members' trust in the hunters gradually decreased, and although the hunters were still respected, they were slowly being marginalized. Looking at Russo, who was surrounded by his tribe members, Duki had a complicated feeling. In the past, this was an honor that belonged to him. Although he was good friends with Russo, he had a sense of superiority in his heart and felt that he was protecting Russo. But now, the positions of the two had been reversed. Russo, who had once been disliked by his clansmen, had become respected. On the other hand, a young hunter with high hopes had gradually been neglected, with no one paying any attention to him. Duki felt the difference between them grow stronger and stronger, and he felt depressed. After dealing with his tribe members, Russo saw Duki and hurriedly walked forward. "How are your injuries?" "I'm fine." Hearing Russo's concern, for some reason, Duki felt irritated. He coldly replied before turning around and walking away as though they were strangers. Seeing Duki being so cold, Russo was confused. In the past, Duki was very cheerful, but after being injured by the members of the army, he became very quiet. It was as though Duki was intentionally avoiding him and was unwilling to communicate with him. He did not understand why. On the other side, Duki walked out of the tribe and ran in the forest. Feeling the wind blowing in his face, his mood gradually relaxed. After running for a long time, Duki decided to go to his secret base. He had coincidentally found a cool spring water in the forest, and he would occasionally return to take a bath there to relax. Every time he finished bathing, he would feel refreshed. However, when he arrived at his destination, the scene there stunned him. The spring water had disappeared, and what replaced it was a bottomless pit. Around the pit were a few metal buildings, and the members of the army were operating strange machines to dig the soil. What are you doing?" Duki was furious. He was extremely repulsed by these extraterrestrial visitors. Just as he was about to approach them with his weapon, his vision blurred, and an army member blocked his path. "The mining site is in front. It's not open to outsiders. Leave immediately." "Where's the spring water? Where's my spring water? What have you done?" Hearing this, Duki was enraged. He pushed the army member in front of him and wanted to rush into the mining site. Bang! A huge force pushed Duki away and he fell a few times. He held his stomach with a pained expression. "I'm sorry, please do not obstruct us from mining. If you have any needs, you can go to the stronghold near the tribe. This place is not open to outsiders." The army member shook his head. "Why can't I go over? This is clearly the place that I discovered." Duki clenched his fists with a furious expression. At this moment, he saw the extraterrestrial visitors digging out a large pile of shiny crystals from the original location of the spring water. Seeing this, Duki seemed to have understood. These people were draining the spring water to dig out these crystals. Looking up, he saw that the trees around him were all chopped down and the forest was replaced by metal. He was a giant sprite that could run freely, but he was rejected by the extraterrestrial visitors. Thinking about what he had experienced in the past few days, an inexplicable sadness surged in his heart. However, he did not know where this feeling came from. In his confusion, Duki seemed to have a feeling. This should have been something that belonged to them. For the first time, he had such a feeling. This forest, this land, this planet was their home. "Uncle, is it not very good for us to do this?" In the flagship in the sky, Aurora hesitated for a while before suddenly speaking. Han Shao raised his eyebrows. "What are you trying to say?" At the side, Gila also looked over. Aurora pursed her lips and said softly, "What we're doing is actually invading the homeland of the natives." "I know what you mean." Han Shao waved his hands. "What we're doing is educating, bringing knowledge to the natives and making them more civilized. It's different from just invading." "But," Aurora mustered up her courage. This planet was originally their homeland. These natives don't have the ability to defend their homeland, so they can only watch as their homeland is invaded by us. If we take their resources here, won't it be a bit bullying? They should be thankful that they don't have the ability to resist, or more people will die. But, Sai, you don't have to say any more, Han Shao interrupted Aurora and said helplessly. Do you think they have a choice? Actually, we can avoid the planets where the natives live and explore other unknown planets. Aurora blinked. Han Shao shook his head, walked to the porthole, looked at the universe outside, and sighed. You're too idealistic. When this star field was discovered by the three universal civilizations, the fate of all life in the star field changed, and they no longer have the right to develop freely. We can avoid the planets where the natives live, but when the Red Empire opens up the flickering world, do you think the other civilizations will let them go? They're destined to lose many things, and letting outsiders share their homeland and accept the teachings of the Red Empire is already a very good ending. The weak will not be able to get the best of both worlds. Aurora fell silent and felt conflicted. Because of her Esper ability, she was more sensitive and had a strong empathy for other life forms. She sympathized with the natives. Even if the Panguru's giant elves did not know the meaning behind it, she could not refute the law of the jungle in the universe. Hela had a calm expression. She was different from her younger sister. She had always believed that being weak was a sin and did not have much sympathy. Han Shao paused for a moment before saying, "There's no need to think too much about it. Excavating their resources is indeed not a noble act, but you have to know that no race has the obligation to help another race develop. The civilization that the dynasty brought is because the natives' homeland is rich in resources. In essence, it's a transaction, although it's a transaction that the natives have no right to reject." In his previous life, after many years of development, Planet Pangurus had become a trading hub, and the natives were split into two factions. One faction accepted the civilization and became galactic residents, learning all sorts of knowledge and technology. They started to climb the technological tree, allowing the civilization to quickly leap past the primitive stage and develop rapidly. They had their own cities on planet Pangurus, and because it was connected to the galaxy, the natives could travel through the galaxy from time to time. The other faction rejected the civilization and chose to maintain their primitive way of life. This faction was hostile toward the galactic residents and the civilization branch. They tried to resist, but it was to no avail. In the end, they decided to not interact with the outside world and continued to live in the mountains with wild beasts as their companions. No one disturbed them. As a result, the Panguru's giant elves were split into two factions. However, every year, there would be people from the primitive faction who would leave their tribes and join the civilization branch. Compared to the exploration era, this is already not bad, Fu Ding said. Upon hearing that, Han Shao nodded. The exploration of the flickering world was actually a microcosm of the exploration era. However, the difference was that the three universal civilizations now had enough strength to dominate the universe and suppress all who refused to submit. During the exploration era, when the various civilizations discovered each other, the first thing they thought of was to destroy each other. The flames of war were endless, and there were many casualties. Chapter 8:19. In the face of overwhelming strength, no matter what the Panguru's giant elves thought or did, they would not be able to stop the fleet from mining resources. The efficiency of the interstellar mining equipment was very pleasing. Every resource point in the world was continuously producing all kinds of raw materials. Batches of minerals filled up the warehouses, and the daily income was quite impressive. During the mining process, some of the exploration teams discovered even more resources underground, causing the value of the planet to rise once again. Han Shao looked at the report and felt extremely comfortable. While the profits from mining the resource planets of the civilizations in the shattered star ring were not small, they were still in the territory of others, and they did not have enough freedom. As for mining the resource planets in the flickering world that he discovered, he could do so with great fanfare. As long as it was not a destructive mining, the dynasty would not interfere. These rare materials could be sold to the dynasty or brought back to the shattered star ring to be sold. Han Shao temporarily stored them up and got the professionals to sell them at a high price. After the construction of the Stargate was completed, a small team from the dynasty arrived. After greeting Han Shao, they also joined in the collection of resources. The professionals they brought took over the job of educating the natives. After a simple handover, Han Shao retrieved a portion of the manpower. The initial exploration of planet Pangurus was complete, and the only thing left was mining. He decided to stay on this planet for 2 days to allow the players to do some activities before heading out to explore the next planet. Now that all the players had explored the first planet, they had a certain understanding of the Flickering World mission. The players who encountered a resource planet were faced with a choice. They could choose to stay and mine the resources. The ordinary players would naturally reject this choice. How could they give up the entire forest for a single tree? However, the many first-rate guilds in China were the exact opposite. Most of the core members of the guilds were following Han Zhao's main fleet, and they were not willing to give up on the rich resources of planet Pangurus. To the guilds, a bird in the hand was better than 10 in the bush. They needed the resource points to provide them with long-term income. The 4 largest guilds in China had many members, so they left behind a group of people to mine the resource points. Because the production of the large-scale mining equipment belonged to the army, these guilds bought a batch of worker bee armor from the army and gave them to the remaining members to mine on their own. This would be the long-term income of the guilds. The players had their own ways of generating income, and Han Shao would not stop them. This was just a small profit, and it was not enough for him to stop the players from displaying their own subjective initiative. The more these guilds were fed, the more they would acknowledge the army. The Russian and Australian club guilds from the Constellation Corridor had already developed a group of peripheral members during this period of time. They followed suit and left some people to stay in the resource points, hoping to get a share of the loot. Seeing this, the 4 great families decided to wait until the main force left before asking for the help of the other first-rate guilds to find trouble with these outsiders. This way, these foreign guilds would not be able to harvest resources in peace. As long as the main force left, the people left on this planet would be at their mercy. In Han Zhao's previous life, the various guilds had been destroying each other's resource points in the Flickering World in version 4.0. Now that the Russian and Australian guilds were in the territory of the Chinese guilds would not sit back and watch their competitors develop peacefully. Since Han Shao had allowed some players to cross over to other star fields in advance, the competition between guilds had started earlier than in his previous life. Planet Pangurus in a certain sea region. Raging winds and torrential rain filled the area. A mining base was located on the sea, and it did not move at all. A semicircular energy shield covered the entire base, and the waves smashed onto the shield, leaving behind white foam. At the edge of the base, warriors wearing underwater armor with detection equipment on their backs entered the water. A portion of them were players. There was a molten crystal vein below the base, and these people entered the water to investigate the situation in the sea region. Maple Moon had also accepted this mission. She wore underwater armor and swam underwater, reaching a depth of a few thousand meters very quickly. His field of vision was filled with dark blue seawater. Extending into the distance, the seawater turned pitch black, filled with the fear of the unknown. His ears were silent, only the beeping of the radar, his own breathing, and the thumping of his heart in his chest. This silent and terrifying atmosphere caused Maple Moon to tremble, and she almost wanted to curl up into a ball. I should return. At most, I won't do this mission. Maple Moon was afraid. Although her combat strength had reached grade B, the attributes of her character would not give any bonuses to her mentality. She felt that she might have a slight phobia of the deep sea. Just as she was about to float up, the radar suddenly sounded. A large life form has been detected. The target is approaching. The seawater around her began to surge, and Maple Moon's body could not be controlled. She hurriedly activated the stabilizer, and a white light shot out from the armor. Only then did she stabilize her body. Before she could observe her surroundings, the radar showed that a dot of light was rushing toward her with the speed of a missile. Maple Moon turned around in panic. Suddenly, a huge monster appeared in her vision. It had countless webbed claws, and its head was like a plesiosaur's. It opened its bloody mouth at her. Her vision turned black, and she was swallowed. After the hunt, the monster slowed down. Just as it was about to enjoy its meal, its huge body suddenly twitched in pain. The next moment, a dazzling blue light exploded from the monster's body, blasting it into pieces. Boom! Purple blood and flesh splattered in the sea. Maple Moon's armor was covered in a sticky liquid that was a mixture of blood and gastric juices. Looking at this bloody scene, Maple Moon hurriedly turned on her green health mode. Only then did she feel that the scene was much more harmonious. She was just frightened and forgot to resist. When she came back to her senses, she unleashed the strength of a grade B mechanic and easily killed a normal beast. Maple Moon kept the bomb turrets beside her. She could not stand the deep-sea atmosphere and was about to float up. Suddenly, the radar notified her that she had detected an abnormal metal object in the monster's tattered body. What did I discover? Maple Moon's eyes flickered. As a storyline player, her curiosity had always been very strong. Her instincts told her that she might have discovered something hidden. After hesitating for half a second, she stopped floating up and searched the monster's body. She then released a magnetic force from her palm. Clang! A 1-meter-long metal object was sucked into her hand. You have discovered an unknown detector. You have received 6 exploration points. This is a hidden mission item. Maple Moon's eyes sparkled, and she threw the fear of the deep sea to the back of her mind. She then looked at the unknown detector in her hand with interest. She loved to dig up unknown plots. Without saying anything, she immediately returned to the base with the item. She did not even remove her armor and hurriedly started to appraise the detector. Her mechanic class ability met the requirements, and the results quickly popped up on her interface. Appraisal complete. The technology level is not low. Maple Moon was surprised. This had already reached the level of a star system civilization. Did this mean that planet Pangurus had already been discovered by a certain civilization? There was also a possibility that this beacon had already been damaged in space and lost its positioning ability. In the end, it was captured by the gravity of planet Pangurus and fell into the deep sea, becoming food for the sea creatures. If not, planet Pangurus would have already had visitors. Maple Moon was in a dilemma. This beacon was valuable information, and she would definitely be rewarded if she handed it over to the army. However, she could not help but feel curious. She wanted to repair this beacon and see what the special consequences were and what kind of people it would attract. After hesitating for a moment, Maple Moon gritted her teeth. Her curiosity won out. You have used intermediate repair on the damaged location beacon. Appraising passed. Your level, intelligence, class knowledge, and skill level have all met the prerequisite. Repair progress, 2%, 14%, 35% repair complete. You have received barely repaired location beacon. Maple Moon was overjoyed. Without hesitation, she activated the beacon. Beep beep. The beacon lit up, and an invisible quantum positioning signal was sent to the receiving end of the unknown organization. You have triggered the hidden mission beacon of unknown origin. Mission introduction. You have discovered a rather high-tech location beacon on a native planet in the flickering world. You do not know who placed this beacon, but you have chosen to repair and activate it, sending out the location information. This might attract the attention of the unknown organization. Mission requirements: come into contact with the unknown organization that placed the beacon. Mission reward: 300 EXP, 70 individual exploration points, 1 bold explorer ability fragment. Requires 2 fragments to be fused. Bold explorer, a special ability. When exploring an unknown location or appraising an unknown item, you can use this ability to obtain a portion of information. Can be used repeatedly on the same target. Cooldown: 7 days. Every time you use it, you will receive the negative status, Reckless, and your LUK will be reduced by 60%. Lasts for 14 days. Remarks: as long as you have the courage, the universe is your home. This mission is linked to the Flickering World main storyline mission. You can report the situation to the faction you are in and receive the help of the NPC faction. Strongly recommended. Reward ability fragment? This kind of mission reward is really rare, and I can even request the help of the faction. Does this mean that the consequences of activating the beacon are very serious? The moment she thought about handing it over, the image of the army commander appeared in her mind. You found the beacon of an advanced civilization on this planet? Looking at the beacon in Maple Moon's hands, Han Zhao's eyes were filled with doubt. Originally, he thought that Maple Moon was only there to learn a skill. He did not expect her to bring him a hidden item. Currently, only the dynasty was developing this area, so this beacon could only have come from an unknown native civilization in the Flickering World. According to the technology involved, the one who placed it should be at least at the star system level. This beacon used conventional thrusters and gravitational flight technology. Even if it flew for a few hundred years, its speed would still be limited. Therefore, the civilization that placed the beacon should be in this star system. However, Han Xiao remembered that in his previous life, there was no native star system civilization in the southern border star system of the Geru star cluster. The exploration data of the Red Empire did not indicate that they had encountered a star system civilization there. In his previous life, he had also not heard of anything similar from the NPCs who explored during the version update. Could it be that the civilization that placed the beacon had already been destroyed and only the ruins were left? This possibility was not impossible. However, when Han Xiao took the beacon from Maple Moon's hands, a notification popped up on his interface. He had also triggered the same hidden mission, and the mission requirement implied that this unknown organization still existed. Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. In his previous life, the initial exploration of the Flickering World took place during the version update, and the players only managed to recreate the exploration through various records and characters. Could this be a hidden storyline that even the dynasty did not discover in his previous life? Maple Moon did not know that Han Xiao could also accept the mission and was thinking about how to explain that she knew that the beacon was useful. At this moment, Han Xiao opened his mouth. Let me study this for a period of time. I might be able to discover some problems. Hearing that, Maple Moon thought that this was a mission item and did not reject it. After watching Maple Moon leave, Han Xiao then carefully studied the beacon in his hand. His eyes sparkled. I never thought that there would be such an unexpected discovery on planet Pangurus. The ability of these players to find hidden missions is quite reliable. Han Xiao chuckled. The reward of this hidden mission was extremely tempting. Bold Explorer was an appraisal ability that reached the level of special foresight. In his previous life, very few players had this ability. While it was not useful for combat, it was a godly ability when it came to completing missions and discovering hidden storylines. He only knew that there was a chance of obtaining a skill fragment from a hidden mission. Other than that, there was no fixed way to obtain it. Although this skill had a lot of limitations, it was still useful to him. Just the strange data left behind by God was still a mystery, and Aesop could not predict anything. If he could obtain this skill, he might be able to find some clues. It's a pity that it's not a complete ability, only a fragment. Han Xiao felt a little regretful. Shaking his head, Han Xiao then entered the quantum network and studied the beacon, deciphering the other party's positioning data. This beacon used quantum link technology, which meant that he could use the ability of a virtual mechanic to track it. The mission requirement was to come into contact with this unknown organization. While it seemed like he only needed to wait for the opportunity, there was actually a deeper meaning behind it. The flickering world was not like the explored universe, and there was no order like a galactic society. The native civilizations here were still in a dark period and did not know of each other's existence. Thus, once the beacon was activated, it would mean a war for the person who placed it. Coming into contact with it would mean facing an attack from the person who placed it. Thus, rather than having the person who placed it find him, Han Xiao was more willing to take the initiative to send people over. After all, the requirement was to come into contact with the other party. After searching through the quantum link for a while, Han Xiao suddenly opened his eyes and opened his star map. After searching for a while, he pointed at a location that was a few star zones away from planet Pangurus. It was also within this star system. Found you guys. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. He remembered that there was no native civilization at this location in his previous life. After thinking for a while, Han Xiao snapped his fingers, and Psionic Prime, who was circling behind him, immediately fused and stood in front of him. Master, I have a mission for you. Han Xiao slowly said, bring some mechanical lives and a portion of your mechanical army along with you. Find the person who placed the beacon. If they attack, subdue them. Understood, Master. Psionic Prime nodded, and the sound of metal rubbing against each other could be heard. He then split into many hovering guards and flew out of the room to form a team. Because it was a few star zones away, it would be too abrupt and a waste of time to go there, so Han Xiao did not plan to do it personally. Now that he had his mechanical lives, and with the quantum infinite distance transmission channel, his mechanical soldiers would receive mechanical force bonuses even if they were not beside him. His mech legion already possessed the ability to go on expeditions, and they would still possess the strength of a beyond grade A super even if they were countless light years away. This was one of the reasons why beyond grade A mechanics were feared in the galaxy. Their range were the most terrifying of all the classes. Chapter 820. At the same time, the data sent by the positioning beacon was transmitted to a barren planet several star zones away through the quantum link. A huge disc-shaped battleship the size of a mountain was parked quietly in a crater. It had a diameter of more than 30 kilometers and was entirely iron-gray in color. The material used was an ordinary alloy, which was considered a beginner space battleship material in the explored universe. This disc-shaped battleship had anti-gravity levitation and high-density nuclear thrusters. Its hyperdrive technology was very rudimentary. If there were galactic residents here, they would know that the technology level of this battleship was between that of a galactic civilization and a surface civilization. It was equivalent to the technology level of a planetary civilization that had just started colonizing outer space. The only thing that stood out was its quantum communication technology. A large number of cryogenic hibernation pods were distributed in the bottom cabin. Countless crew members were sleeping in them. Only a few people were awake, maintaining the life support function of the spaceship in the bridge cockpit. Dozens of creatures in simple combat suits were busy in front of the control panels. These creatures were quite short, had 6 arms, and brown skin. At this time, one of the control panels suddenly issued a notification. Beep beep. Beacon 0278 has been activated. The positioning data of the beacon has been received. All the operators in the room hurriedly turned their heads and rushed to the control panel, whispering to each other. Then, a tall creature of another species pushed through the crowd and squeezed to the front of the control panel. "Get out of the way, let me see. Ha ha, did we discover a new planet?" This tall creature was obviously the leader. He was nearly 3 meters tall, and the short operators around him only reached his thighs. This person was wearing metal armor, which made clanking sounds as he walked. His appearance was lawless, even more ferocious than an orc. It did not conform to the aesthetic standards of most humanoid creatures. "Leader Kikiga, this beacon has been lost for a long time. I didn't expect it to be activated now. Our beacon has been discovered by an unknown intelligent creature. They have repaired the beacon." An operator was quite frightened. "Isn't that even better? We can even capture them as slaves and offer them to the Great Emperor. The Great Emperor loves new species the most." Kikiga laughed loudly. "Leader, it's not that simple. The target this time is different from the species we have invaded before. The other party can repair the beacon, which means that they have a technological level close to ours. There are not many people in the entire universe who can catch up to us. The target this time is not so easy to deal with. They took the initiative to repair the beacon, and it's very likely that they want to find us." "What? They dare to look for us?" Hearing that, Kikiga's expression turned ferocious and he said angrily, "It seems that they are a bunch of ignorant people who have never heard of the name of the Great Cosmos Core. You want to track us down? You're courting death." If Han Shao were here, he would not be unfamiliar with the name Great Cosmos Cores. This was a native organization of the flickering world, a wandering civilization that had lost their mother planet due to a disaster. They had been wandering around the center of the Gerar star cluster, looking for all kinds of resources to sustain their lives. In the early days of their vagrancy, they explored the planets around them through beacons and gradually discovered some underdeveloped civilizations. Due to the lack of trust and communication, they destroyed all the civilizations they encountered and plundered a lot of resources and technology. Gradually, they got used to this way of development and turned from a vagrant civilization into a space pirate organization, making a living by plundering planets. As most of the native civilizations in the Gerar star cluster were relatively weak and did not interact with each other, this organization was tyrannical in the central area of the star cluster, and no one stopped them. They had accumulated a lot of resources and manpower through plundering. There were no civilizations nearby that could resist them. This group of people thought that they were the overlords of this universe, so they changed their name and called themselves the Great Cosmos Cores. Just from this name alone, one could tell that this group of people was quite arrogant. Later on, the Great Cosmos Core started to explore even further. With their technology, they naturally could not figure out the overall distribution of the star cluster. They were completely clueless about the unknown regions and could only explore. Although they had occupied many planets as their territory, they had not fully explored the star system and lacked all kinds of basic facilities. It was like they had occupied a few planets and thought that they ruled an area. Compared to the civilizations in the explored universe, this group of people was completely clueless. This was an unexplored star field without order, which was why such a special organization had appeared. They had an area of influence that exceeded a star system civilization, but their strength was not even comparable to the most ordinary star system civilization. Due to the lack of opponents, they felt very good about themselves. Their strength was only limited to the native standards. In Han Zhao's words, this group of people was commonly known as frogs at the bottom of a well. In his previous life, when the dynasty explored the Gerar star cluster, they only left a short amount of information about this organization. Han Shao had laughed for a long time after reading it. Because in the dynasty's records, the deeds of this great cosmos cores could be compared to the Wan Shun heavenly kingdom in real life. However, when he discovered the beacon, the title of Hidden Mission was quite suspicious, and Han Xiao thought that this was a mysterious civilization in the local star system. The Great Cosmos Core was located in the middle of the Geru star cluster, and in the dynasty's records, there was no mention of the Great Cosmos Core appearing in the southern border star system of the Geru star cluster. Furthermore, the dynasty only had a short record of the Great Cosmos Core because this local organization was simply too weak to the dynasty. They had committed the common mistake of the natives, which was arrogance. This small episode was not worth recording to the dynasty. In his previous life, the dynasty's exploration was something that happened during the version update, and the players did not experience it personally. After officially entering the flickering world, the Great Cosmos Core had long been dead. Han Xiao could only understand it through the dynasty's records and did not have a deep impression of it. Therefore, he did not think in that direction at first and did not know that the target of the mission was this organization. However, even if he knew, it would not make much of a difference to him. I think it's better to report this to the Emperor. With just the few of us, I'm afraid it's not enough. What did you say? Kikiga was easily angered. He slammed his palm on the table. Leader, don't be angry. The Emperor put you in charge of this area. If we act on our own, the Emperor will be angry. Hearing that the Emperor might be angry, Kikiga shivered and said hesitantly, "Then, let's report this to the Emperor." Everyone hastily contacted the Emperor and focused. Very soon, the projection of a person appeared on the screen. The person in the image was of a humanoid race. His entire body was wrapped in dark purple mechanical armor, and only his head was exposed. He had messy black hair and pale skin. The lower half of his face was covered by a metal mask, so his appearance could not be seen. His eyes were filled with indifference. He was wearing a bright red cape that covered half of his shoulders. Thick tentacles extended from his back. These tentacles were muscular and similarly covered in a certain amount of armor. They were like many mechanical tails that clustered around this person. He was sitting on a steel throne on a battleship. Behind him was a metal wall with the insignia of the Great Cosmos Core engraved on it. The skulls of different beasts were hung on it like trophies or collectibles. This person was the leader of the Great Cosmos Core, Adamo. Seeing this person, Kikiga hurriedly stood up. "You better have a reason to disturb me." Adamo raised his eyelids. His tone was neither salty nor light, but it was filled with coldness. Kikiga shuddered. He had become one of the leaders because of his outstanding combat ability. Although he had a bad temper, he was afraid of Adamo from the bottom of his heart. Under the constant reminders of the operators, he stuttered and reported what had just happened and carefully waited for a reply. "So, you were discovered by a group of unknown organizations with advanced technology?" "Yes, what should we do? Invade their planet, plunder their technology, snatch their resources, destroy them, and capture them." Adamo's tone did not change. "Do you still need me to teach you all these?" Understood. Kikiga hurriedly nodded. After hanging up, Kikiga heaved a sigh of relief and glared at the operator beside him. "Did you hear that? The Emperor wants us to destroy the enemy. Wake up all the fellows that are sleeping. We have a war to fight." 2 days passed in the blink of an eye, and Han Zhao's main fleet left planet Pangurus. He only left behind a certain number of mining troops. The next planet that Han Xiao planned to personally explore was a resource-rich planet in the first star zone of the border star system. In his memory, the famous planets were scattered all over the place. Compared to the size of the entire star cluster, the first star zone was still a little smaller. Other than planet Pangurus, he had some impression of more than 10 planets in this star zone, and they were all places that he had personally visited in the past. A portion of them were resource-rich planet. Back then, he had mainly formed a team to snatch the resources from the guild. The rest were functional planets, such as Stargate stations and supply stations. The exploration team of the Black Star Corps and Seneco's exploration team split up. Based on their current efficiency, it would take them around 17 to 18 days to explore all the planets in the first star zone. As such, it would take them around half a year to explore the entire star system. The main reason was that they had to spend a lot of time on the road. After all, not every planet had natives, and ordinary planets could be explored very quickly. As for the Special Task Force, because they did not stop during the journey, they would only need 4 months to cross more than 10 star systems and establish long-distance stargates. During this period of time, Han Xiao felt that he should be able to explore all the planets in the star system that he had an impression of. On the other side, a few battleships left the fleet and carried the mechanical troops sent by Han Xiao. They followed the reverse positioning of the beacon and headed toward where Kikuga and the others were. Inside the spaceship, rows of mechanical soldiers quietly lined up. Under Sparta's remote control, they were on standby and did not move at all. In the cabin, however, there was a group of fellows that did not fit in with the lifeless mechanical army. They were the mechanical lives under Han Xiao that had activated their tinder. Everyone, this is the first time Master has sent us out to fight. We definitely cannot disappoint Master. In the spacious room, dozens of mechanical lives were either sitting or standing, looking at Psionic Prime, who was speaking with a serious expression. As soon as he said that, a silver mechanical life that was leaning on the sofa spoke in an impatient tone. "Humph, we're all the first generation of Master's children. You were just born the earliest, and you think you're our leader?" Han Xiao had personally created thousands of first-generation mechanical lives, and Psionic Prime was the leader. However, some mechanical lives were not convinced. The mechanical lives that had awakened free thinking also had emotional modules. Because their bodies were different, they would basically have a body that was convenient for them to move around through nanotransformations. According to the bloodline relationship of life forms, Silver Flash, "I'm your big brother," Psionic Prime said. This mechanical life form that spoke was called Silver Flash. He was usually jealous of Psionic Prime for being able to accompany Han Xiao all the time. Psionic Prime was only a hovering fissioner, and Master clearly liked his thick, long, and fierce planet destroyer the most. "Let's fight. Let's fight. Whoever wins gets to be the big brother." A reddish-black mechanical life form that was clearly shorter than the others jumped up and down. Its main body was a dark energy floating cannon called Crimson Flame. "Stop messing around." Psionic Prime waved his hands. "I'm messing around." Silver Flash saw the opportunity and suddenly pounced. His mechanical but crushed the sofa as he charged toward Psionic Prime. Psionic Prime immediately split from his human form into many hovering guards, allowing Silver Flash to pass through. But Silver Flash placed his arms on the ground, spun his body, and kicked toward Psionic Prime's hovering guard doppelganger. His main body was a planet destroyer, so he did not dare to fire casually on the ship. 2 hovering guards suddenly combined and turned into a hand, grabbing Silver Flash's leg. Sparks flew as the metal clashed. Psionic Prime then returned to his human form and threw Silver Flash over his shoulder. Bang! The heavy mechanical body smashed a crater into the metal floor with a bang. "Do you still want to play?" Psionic Prime grabbed Silver Flash's leg and did not let go. His palm released a nanoparticle restraining field, preventing Silver Flash from nanotransforming and retracting his leg. Silver Flash fell to the ground. One of his legs was grabbed, and the other leg kept kicking toward Psionic Prime. Psionic Prime dodged all of his attacks like children fighting. The 2 mechanical lives fought, and the room was instantly in a mess. The surrounding mechanical lives quickly moved away and cleared the space. Usually, in Han Zhao's secondary space military camp, mechanical lives would spar with each other every day. All the mechanical lives were used to it. Did you not apply the oil? Harder! The Scarlet Fire Regiment shouted from the side, wishing for the world to be in chaos. One of the Oathkeepers could not stand it anymore and kicked it away like a ball. Don't sink the spaceship. If you want to fight, go to the combat room, a Ranger Mechanical Life yelled. At this time, all the movements of the Mechanical Lives froze, and Sparta's cold voice sounded. Master finally gave you guys a mission, and you guys are messing around? All of you better reflect on yourselves. Mechanical Lives had free will, but in the underlying logic, Han Zhao's artificial intelligence had a higher priority, second only to Han Zhao's authority. Normally, Han Zhao would not allow the artificial intelligence to easily take over the control and let the mechanical lives move freely. That way, the growth effect would be better. However, Sparta did not want these mechanical lives to continue messing around. In an instant, he took away the control of these mechanical lives and controlled them to return to the cabin. However, although these mechanical lives could not control their bodies, their minds were still active, and they cursed at each other through the network. Silver Flash, if it was an open space, you would have turned into scrap metal already. Psionic Prime, hee hee. Ranger, it's all your fault. We can't even move. Oathkeeper, Silver Flash, after completing the mission, I'll dismantle you and send you back to Master to be reconstructed. Silver Flash, you think I'm afraid of you? Let me blast you with my cannon if you dare. Let's see if you have the chance to be reconstructed. These mechanical lives could not move their bodies, but their mouths could speak. In short, they were punished to stand. Chapter 821. After Han Zhao's fleet left planet Pangurus, the players of the various guilds that were left behind on the planet could not wait to take action. The four major guilds pretended to be uninvolved while they secretly gathered the members of the other first-rate guild. Among them were the Rainstorm Club's Drizzle River, the Fanatics Club's God's Forbidden Zone, the Heavenly Palace's Spirit Celestial Lake, and Rivervale's Rivervale. These first-rate guilds had around 60 to 70 members that were left behind on planet Pangurus, and they were considered workshop players. There were two types of guild members. The first was the ordinary players that were attracted by the guild's reputation and resources. The second type was the various workshops that took on the hard work of the guild and collected a certain amount of fees. Hence, they were more organized. Hundreds of guild members gathered together to discuss. The Russians and Australians don't have enough manpower, and each club has less than 20 people. Both sides have more than 100 people. However, they did not split up, and over 100 of them gathered together to mine. Although the Russians and Australians had colluded with the four major guilds, they were secretly taking precautions. The Russians were led by the Strength and Glory Guild, while the Australians were led by the Kangaroo Boxing Guild. The players of the various guilds were gathered at two locations to mine. Adding up to 100 people from each country, they were close to the number of first-rate guilds in China. This seemed to be safer and would prevent them from being attacked. However, they did not expect that the first-rate guilds in China would work together to deal with them. After discussing for a while, they decided on a plan. They had the absolute advantage in terms of manpower, and they decided to split up and attack the resource points of the Russians and Australians. In a certain mine base, at the Kangaroo Boxing Guild's resource point, dozens of Australian players were wearing worker bee armor and mining diligently. They stored the resources in the armor and transported them back to the small guild warehouse on the surface. There were a few warehouses that belonged to different guilds in Australia. There were also workshop players patrolling the area. Although they worked together for safety, it did not mean that they would share the resources. These warehouses were portable warehouses that the various guilds had bought from the army, and they were not cheap. They were equivalent to their base in the resource point. Suddenly, the patrolling players' expressions changed as they saw a group of well-equipped first-rate guild players appear in their line of sight. These first-rate guild players were currently charging towards them from afar, their thrusters leaving trails of flame in their wake. Gather! Someone is attacking our resource point. The club guilds from Australia hastily recalled their manpower, but it was too late. 200 to 300 players from the first-rate guilds rushed into the resource point and tore apart the players guarding the warehouse. The Australian players who had rushed back from the mines immediately engaged the players from the first-rate guild. A group battle erupted, and both sides immediately engaged in a chaotic battle. Bang bang bang! Pugilists used all kinds of strange abilities, filling the entire field with colorful energy. Mages kept casting spells one after another, psychics crazily used psychic attacks to cause AoE damage, and they were all treated as backline slices. Metahumans used all kinds of strange abilities, filling the entire field with colorful energy. Mages kept chanting and casting spells one after another, while psychics crazily used psychic attacks to cause AoE damage. They were treated as backline slices. Among them, the mechanic class caused the most damage. They used all kinds of weapons to attack. Blue energy beams crisscrossed, and when they hit the target, energy explosions would occur. Armor-piercing bullets shot out like torrents, splashing mud everywhere, breaking trees, and leaving fine pinholes on various objects. Version 3.0 happened to be the powerful version where the mechanic class shone. At this time, the mechanic class finally learned the skill that allowed them to improve their combat style: compressed orb technology. Compressed orbs opened up in the field one after another, turning into turrets, small mechanical soldiers, mechanical traps, and all kinds of mechanical equipment. Be it in terms of wealth, combat power, or numbers, the first-rate guilds had an absolute advantage. They quickly destroyed the Australian players who had stayed behind and sent people to block the respawn point and kill them. On the other hand, they started to attack the few Australian guild warehouses and destroyed them very quickly. The resources that the Australian players had collected during this period were all taken away as spoils of war. This resource point became a mess. After killing all the Australian players, the first-rate guilds immediately retreated with the spoils of war. Hundreds of souls floating above the respawn point sent them off with grief and anger. On the other hand, the Russian resource point also received the same treatment and was completely looted. Our resource point has been destroyed? In one of the transport ships in the fleet, Vodka was shocked when he received the message from the players who had stayed behind. After hearing that it was done by the first-rate guilds in China, he was furious and immediately sent a message to the guild leaders of Long Sky and Dynasty to question them. "Why did you attack our resource point?" Jade Green Sky pretended to be confused. "What are you talking about? When did we do such a thing? You have to have evidence for everything. Otherwise, I'll sue you for slander. Just now, the resource point we left on the planet was destroyed by your Chinese guild. The players who stayed behind were blocked at the resurrection point and killed until their resurrection count ran out. They couldn't resurrect in the game for 6 days. Why did those Chinese guild members attack us? You can ask them. We didn't do it." Jade Green Sky held back his laughter. "We bought equipment from you guys and you promised to provide us protection. You guys went back on your word," Vodka said angrily. Jade Green Sky snorted. It wasn't as if he didn't know about the little tricks of these foreign guilds. On the surface, they bought some equipment through their channels, but in private, they had already found other Chinese players to cooperate with and enjoy a 10% discount while keeping it a secret from them. Morning Snow Twilight Frost chuckled. "We didn't know about this beforehand. After all, those first-rate guilds have their own thoughts and are not our subordinate. We have to ask them about the situation. Don't worry, we'll try our best to convince those guilds." "That's great." Vodka nodded. After hanging up, Vodka was unhappy. He only felt that something was amiss. No matter how he looked at it, these first-rate guilds working together to deal with them had something to do with the 4 biggest guilds. It might happen again in the future. Thinking about that, he contacted the captain of the players who had stayed behind and said, "After you guys revive, I'll transfer you a sum of money. Buy some warning devices in the army, such as automatic cannons, traps, laser arrays, and so on. Set them up next to the new resource point. The more you buy, the better. Don't be afraid of spending money. By the way, give up your current location and find a more dangerous place to mine." On the other side, Jade Green Sky and Morning Snow Twilight Frost were also discussing. This attack can make them hesitate and spend more money on unnecessary defensive measures. Those first-rate guilds did not intend to attack frequently in the first place. We can say that we convinced those guilds and did not go back on our word. After these people build new resource points and recover for a while, we'll organize another attack. At that time, they'll have a new batch of resources in their resource points, and we'll be able to snatch them. If we continue to harass them like this, their resource points will be very limited. As long as we make them angry, we can start a large-scale guild war and use our advantage in numbers to wipe out the backbone of their guild. Insidious, you're the insidious one. Jade Green Sky gave him a thumbs up. Morning Snow Twilight Frost shook his head. It's a pity that they did not send their pro players over. Otherwise, our guilds could help the club get rid of some of their opponents. Pro players were the pillars of the club, so the club placed great importance on their safety. Naturally, they would not dare to send their characters to other people's territory. The reason why the Chinese clubs targeted the foreign guilds was also to protect their own pro players. If the foreign guilds were allowed to gain a foothold in their territory, the possibility of them secretly causing trouble for the Chinese pro players was not low at all. Others could cross star fields to come over, but they could not. The Chinese guilds were actually in a passive position, which was why they had decided to work together to compete with the foreign guilds and protect their own interests. A few days later, in another star zone, the Great Cosmos Core fleet led by Kikuga was slowly moving toward the beacon. Other than the main ship that was dozens of kilometers long, there were more than 30 guard battleships. All the warriors who had been awakened were training. There were more than 1 million people. Inside the main ship, Kikuga rubbed his palms with excitement. He loved plundering and looked forward to the arrival of war. How much longer until we reach the beacon? Kikuga asked several times every day. Reporting to the leader, the beacon's position has been moving for the past few days. I think this is the enemy's trick to confuse us, so we are now moving towards the position where the beacon was first activated. It's not too far away. The leader of the operators had a helpless look on his face. He had to repeat his answer several times every day. The faster, the better. I can't wait. Kikuga's tone was rough. At this time, another operator exclaimed, "Big leader, there are 3 unknown targets approaching us. They can't be meteorites, right?" Kikuga was stunned. In his impression, very few people could travel through space like them. Therefore, his first thought was that they were meteorites or comet. "They don't look like meteorites. They're flying toward us. Sir, I request to enter alert mode." Making a fuss over nothing, Kikuga mumbled and waved his hand. Alert, then. The fleet quickly activated all kinds of weapons and waited. Not long later, the 3 spaceships that Psionic Prime and the others were on appeared and slowly stopped, facing Kikuga and the others. Are they really spaceships? Kikuga was surprised. I guessed right, the operator hurriedly said. They can track our beacon. Their technology is very advanced, and they can travel in the universe. Kikuga sized up the 3 spaceships for a while and suddenly laughed. What are you afraid of? Look at those 3 spaceships. They're so small. How much combat power can they have? Indeed, the spaceships of Psionic Prime and the others were very small compared to Kikuga's main ship that was dozens of kilometers long. In Kikuga's worldview, the size of a spaceship equaled its combat power. Also, look, they only have 3 spaceships, not even 1/10 of ours. We can easily kill them. What are you panicking for? You're embarrassing me. Kikiga shook his head. Hearing this, everyone suddenly felt that it made sense and felt much more at ease. Sir, what should we do now? Kikiga said casually. Looking at their spaceships, we can tell that they're just a small civilization that has just started exploring the universe. They don't know what fear is, so they dare to track our signal without any fear. Humph, as their seniors, we have to teach them a lesson and let them know the taste of fear. At this moment, another operator smiled and said, Big Leader, they sent us a message. They want to communicate with us. Hearing this, everyone laughed and felt that Kikiga's guess was right. Only a civilization that had just started exploring the universe would be so naive. Did they think that they could communicate in the universe? What did they say? Let me see. They said that they're from the Black Star Corps. They want us to put away our weapons and surrender immediately. Before this person finished, he started laughing. As if infected by his laughter, almost everyone in the control room could not help but laugh. The room was filled with a joyful atmosphere. Ha 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 ha! Kikiga laughed so hard that he could not stop. Quick, reply to my message. Reply to what? Ask them if they've heard of the Great Cosmos Corps. Ha ha ha! Kikiga laughed so hard that tears almost came out of his eyes. Black Star Corps? What the hell? Never heard of it? Do they think they're very famous? Don't they know that the Great Cosmos Corps is the overlord of this universe? They want us to surrender? He had never heard such a funny joke before. Kikiga laughed so hard that he almost choked. He only calmed down after a while and said, These arrogant natives are really the source of joy. They always make me happy. Before he finished, he wanted to laugh again. Big Leader, are we going to attack? Kill them. No, don't kill them. Capture them and give them to the Dharch. The Dharch will definitely be amused by these guys. Kikiga laughed. Just as everyone was laughing non-stop, the operator captain suddenly felt his heart tremble. He realized a terrifying blind spot. When they came into contact with the natives, they could not communicate at all because of the language barrier. However, this is clearly the first time these natives have met us, so why do they know our language? Why can they communicate with us? He trembled. Just as he was about to report this anomaly, something strange happened to the three spaceships. The bellies of the three spaceships opened up and black machines poured out. All of a sudden, blue-gold lightning descended from the sky and struck every machine, causing a blinding light to erupt. What are these things? The smiles of Kikiga and the others disappeared. They looked at this scene in shock. The next moment, a silver beam of light shot out, instantly piercing through the main ship's shield. It pierced through the main ship's hull, which was dozens of kilometers long, and left behind a large hole. The tough, spaceship armor was like paper in front of this energy beam. Everyone was stunned, and before they could react, the violent shaking knocked them to the ground. A shrill alarm sounded, and the lights inside the spaceship turned bright red. Woo woo woo. Warning, warning. Shield broken, hull damage increasing. 7-8%. 8-6%. 10-3%. Please take measures as soon as possible. Please take measures as soon as possible. With one hit, the defense of the main spaceship was broken. Kikiga did not get up. He sat on the ground in a daze. His eyes were filled with confusion and disbelief. What just happened? Chapter 822. More than 30 battleships built with star system technology faced off against the mechanical life forms and troops that were buffed by Han Zhao's mechanical force through the quantum infinite distance transmission channel. The battle ended in an instant. This great Cosmos Corps fleet was completely annihilated, and the main ship was blown up into a firework in space. Before the main ship exploded, Kikiga saw that the situation was not good and tried to escape in an escape pod in panic. However, the escape pod was destroyed by the crimson flames halfway. He originally wanted to break out of the encirclement with his extraordinary strength, but Psionic Prime kicked him to the brink of death and captured him. Psionic Prime and the others obeyed the order faithfully. Apart from destroying the battleships, they captured more than 10 upper echelons, including Kikiga. As for the millions of Great Cosmos Corps soldiers, they were annihilated along with the spaceship. Inside the spaceship, Kikiga and the operators were tied up by electromagnetic chains and fell to the ground. The shadow of the mechanical life forms covered everyone, making them so nervous that they almost could not breathe. Everyone looked at the tall mechanical life forms around them in fear and trembled. The mechanical life forms did not have any expressions, so no one could tell what these metal life forms were thinking. They were terrified and did not know what they were going to do next. However, Kikiga had a dazed expression. He still could not believe what had happened. His powerful fleet had been destroyed by these strange creatures so easily. Furthermore, he was completely powerless in front of these monsters. The Great Cosmos Corps respected the strong, and there were some supers among them. However, these people did not have systematic super knowledge, so every super was an extremely rare existence in the Great Cosmos Corps. They took up many important positions, and Kikiga became the leader of a squad because of his outstanding combat ability. He originally had a lot of confidence in his own strength, but this confidence was shattered by Psionic Prime's kick. His mentality collapsed, and he started to doubt his life. What kind of monsters were these metal life forms? He had plundered everywhere, but he had never seen a life form like this. What are you? Kikiga's teeth were chattering. I'm Psionic Prime, the first generation of Black Star's family, the leader of the mechanical army of the Black Star Corps, Psionic Prime slowly said. His emotionless electronic voice made everyone shudder. The Black Star Corps. This was the second time Kikiga had heard that name today. When he first heard it, he didn't think much of it and thought that it was just a bunch of natives. But now, his contempt had disappeared along with the fleet, leaving only panic and fear. Kikiga swallowed. Who was this Black Star Corps? How could they be so powerful? He had never heard of this force before. He only felt that it was extremely mysterious. Seeing Kikiga's face filled with fear and confusion, Psionic Prime tilted his head, raised his finger, and shot out a beam of light, forming a virtual screen in front of everyone. On the screen, images and paragraphs of text scrolled by. They were all the deeds and experiences of the Black Star Corps. Before the battle started, Philip had already hacked into the enemy's spaceship and recorded the language of the Great Cosmos Corps into the database. That was why they could communicate now. Other than the language, the information stored in this fleet was also packaged and copied. The other party's virtual technology was extremely clumsy and had no secrets in front of Philip. He could come and go as he pleased. This is... As the mysterious veil of the Black Star Corps was lifted, Kikiga and the others gradually opened their mouths wide in shock. The origin of the Black Star Corps brought them an unparalleled shock. Their worldview shattered. God Aura, Dark Star, Bloodshed Land, Amethyst Civilization, Red Empire. There were so many organizations in the universe? How come they had never even heard of them? Beyond Grade A? In Kikiga's impression, Adamo was already the strongest person in this universe. He could not imagine how someone could have strength that far exceeded Adamo's. Kikiga originally imagined that Adamo would lead an army to take revenge for them. However, now that he saw the tip of the iceberg of the Black Star Corps, he only had one thought left. Please don't come over. They captured the captives? Han Shao, who was commanding a fleet to explore another resource planet, received Psionic Prime's message and immediately retrieved the copied information from Philip's database. After taking a look, Han Shao was stunned. I knew it. There are no hidden star system civilizations in this area. It turns out that it's those idiots from the Great Cosmos Corps. They actually have a team here. Han Shao realized. I didn't expect the target of this hidden mission to be these people. They didn't meet the dynasty this time but met me instead. It seems like they're very unlucky. Han Xiaoxin chuckled. The territory of the Great Cosmos Core was mainly located in the center of the Geru star cluster. According to the normal exploration speed, it would take at least a few years for them to reach that location. However, they had met these people in advance. After eliminating one of their fleets, the other party would definitely investigate to the end. Although these people would not be able to affect him or the dynasty, it was not his style to ignore them. Han Xiao paced around with his hands behind his back. After pondering for a while, his eyes suddenly sparkled. That's right, these people have plundered many planets. They definitely have the information of these planets in their hands. Even if they destroy some of the planets, they will still be able to provide exploration points. This information is very valuable to the dynasty and can be considered a result. If he obtained this information, the total exploration points of the main storyline mission would definitely skyrocket. Furthermore, this would be considered a dazzling result, and the dynasty would also reward him. It would show that his exploration was smoother than bloodshed lands. This is a pretty good opportunity. Han Zhao's eyes narrowed. Although the Great Cosmos Core was extremely weak, the information they had accumulated was very useful. He turned on his communicator and directly contacted the chief commander, Terakov, without Seneko. Black Star, why are you looking for me? Terakov was a little surprised. Normally, he only needed to discuss matters with Seneko, but Han Xiao directly contacted him. Could there be something special? Chief Commander, I have made a new discovery. Han Xiao slowly said. A few days ago, my army found a damaged beacon on planet Pangurus. After repairing it, I followed the beacon and sent a team to contact an unfamiliar native organization. He then explained the information about the Great Cosmos Core and emphasized, according to the information, this organization lives by plundering and is active in the center of the Geru star cluster. They seem to have a lot of territories. The way I see it, the information they have on the planets will be of great help to our exploration. So, that's the case. Tarakov's eyes flashed, and he pondered for a while before nodding. If you're not wrong, this will indeed allow us to obtain a large amount of information on the planet. This is not a small contribution. You went around Seneko because you want me to allow you to start a war? Han Xiao did not comment. In the dynasty's exploration rules, it was stated that they had to treat the natives peacefully. If they wanted to start a war with a star system-level native organization, they would need the approval of the dynasty. If they wiped out the natives without permission, they would incur the dynasty's displeasure. After all, the star field belonged to the dynasty, and their allies were only helping to mine. Thus, if they wanted to wipe out the Great Cosmos Core, they would need the Chief Commander's approval. As for wiping out the Great Cosmos Core, Han Xiao did not have any psychological burden. These people lived by plundering and had enslaved dozens of native races. They were essentially galactic pirates, and as a galactic pirate hunter, his hands were itchy the moment he saw one. Terakov thought for a while before saying with a deep voice, I will write an order and send it to the Black Star Corps to express that your operation is my idea. I will leave the matter of plundering the information to you guys. There is no need to keep these people alive. Okay. Han Xiao nodded. I will report the truth. The Black Star Corps found this information. This is your work, so the credit will naturally be yours. Terakov pursed his lips and gave a friendly signal. After pausing for a while, Terakov suddenly changed the topic and said with deep meaning, of the 3 star clusters in the first phase, Renault is sandwiched in the middle. Its geographical location is superior, and it looks like it has the most resources. Thus, the upper echelons of the dynasty place the most importance on the development of the Renault star cluster. Why are we suddenly talking about another star cluster? Isn't Renault the area that the Bloodshed Land is exploring? Han Xiao was stunned. Terakov continued. As for the Geru star cluster, because it has more desolate universe belts. The upper echelons of the dynasty have the lowest expectations of Geru. This is also the reason why so few people chose to explore Geru. However, if the exploration of the Geru star cluster is successful, it will be a surprise to the dynasty. Han Xiaoxin understood. Tarakov was revealing the direction of the dynasty and giving him a reminder. The dynasty placed more importance on Renault, so they paid the most attention to Renault. The bloodshed land would need more results to satisfy their expectations. As for the Geru that he explored, as long as the results were not too bad, it would be a surprise. It would be easier for him to obtain credit and be recognized by the dynasty. There were pros and cons. Seeing that Han Xiao was deep in thought, Tarakov smiled and did not continue this topic. He purposely reminded Han Xiao not only to build a good relationship with Han Xiao but also to motivate the Black Star Corps. This was one of his jobs as the Commander-in-Chief. Beacon of Unknown Origin, completed. You have received 3 million EXP and 70 individual exploration points. You have received Bold Explorer, Ability Fragment X1. 2 fragments are required to fuse them. With 1 fragment, at least I have a start. It's time to try and obtain the second fragment. Han Xiaoxin was overjoyed. This was a pleasant surprise. Maple Moon's luck was really good. At this time, the notification on the interface did not end. You have triggered the faction mission, Annihilate the Great Cosmos Corps. Mission Introduction. The Great Cosmos Corps is a predator organization in the Geru Star Cluster. They have committed heinous crimes and have committed heinous crimes. The Black Star Corps is requested to annihilate this organization. Dynasty Exploration Army Commander-in-Chief Tarakov. Note: this mission is a submission of A Flickering World, and will reward exploration point. Note: this mission is a faction series mission. You can complete the following requirements in this mission. Kill enemies I. Kill 10 ordinary warriors of the Great Cosmos Corps. Reward: 750,000 EXP and 3 exploration points. Kill enemies 2. Kill 10 elite warriors of the Great Cosmos Corps. Reward: 1,500,000 EXP and 6 exploration points. Kill enemies 3. Kill 10 spaceship operators. Reward: 2 million EXP and 9 exploration points. Destroy ship I. Destroy a guard battleship. Reward: 3,600,000 EXP and 12 exploration points. Capture the King I. Kill 1 high-level combatant. Reward: 5,500,000 EXP and 24 exploration points. Capture the King II. Kill 1 big boss. Reward: 7 million EXP and 30 exploration points. Capture the King III. Kill Great Emperor Adamo. Reward: 22 million EXP and 60 exploration points. After the mission is completed, the rating will be based on the number of targets completed, and additional rewards will be given. Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. This faction mission was issued by the dynasty to the entire Black Star Corps, which meant that other than him, the other army players could accept it as well. Han Xiao originally planned to send out his mechanical army to crush the Great Cosmos Corps, but he changed his mind at this time. Since the players could accept this mission, he would let the players do it. It would not be a problem to spend more time. This Great Cosmos Corps was not that strong, so it was just right to let the players deal with it. The average strength of the players was gradually increasing, so he might as well let the players destroy the Great Cosmos Corps alone. Other than the spaceships, he did not plan to let any of the army NPCs move together. This was the first military operation that only the players were involved in. This would enrich the exploration of the Flickering World for the players and give them a better experience. Compared to pure exploration, most of the players preferred combat. The people of the Great Cosmos Corps were all walking EXP. Letting the players kill them would be like fertilizing the leek. It was still the early stage of version 3.0, and there were no max-level players yet. Furthermore, players had to replenish their ammo in battle, and their equipment had to be repaired when their durability dropped. Repairs cost money, and even the smallest mosquito was meat. Furthermore, the number of players was so large that many a little makes a mickle, and sand makes a tower. The profit was not much worse than mining resource planet. Han Shao had never neglected the army's firearms business. He was making money from war. Let the enemies gather together and take the initiative to attack. This will save some time. Han Shao contacted Philip and gave Psionic Prime some instructions. Central area of the Geru Star Cluster, Great Cosmos Corps headquarters. An adjutant hastily came to Adamo's seat and said with a trembling voice, "Why, Emperor, we have lost contact with Leader Kikaga's troops." A cold light flashed through Adamo's eyes, and he said with a deep voice, "What happened?" They planned to invade the location of the beacon, but they encountered the enemy's troops midway and were annihilated. The adjutant said with a trembling voice. "Those enemies called themselves the Black Star Corps and sent us a message." Black Star Corps. Adamo frowned. What did they say? The adjutant turned on the device with trembling hands, opened the screen, and played the message. Psionic Prime's figure appeared on the screen, and beside him was Kikaga, who was trembling on the ground. "I am the leader of the mechanical army of the Black Star Corps, Psionic Prime. People of the Great Cosmos Corps, listen up. The Black Star Corps will flatten all your territories, kill all your warriors, and take everything from you. Tell your leader, Adamo, that the army commander will drink from his skull." As soon as he said that, Psionic Prime's arm turned into a sharp blade flickering with psionic light and slashed across Kikaga's neck. Poochie! Fresh blood spurted out, and Kikaga's head was separated from his body. His headless corpse fell to the ground and was still twitching. Psionic Prime's tone was emotionless. "Prepare for war." Then, the screen turned black and all the messages were played. Adamo was originally looking at this video indifferently, but when Kikaga was beheaded right in front of him, his eyes flickered. "Emperor, this is a provocation." The adjutant carefully asked, "What should we do?" Adamo slowly stood up. "Gather all the fleets, all the combatants, and all the leaders." Adamo's tone was cold. "I'll go personally this time. They want war, so I'll give them war." Beacon of unknown origin completed. Maple Moon was in a dungeon with Pork Bun and the others, fighting a boss when the mission completion notification popped up on her interface. Her movements froze and she was shocked. "It's only been a few days, and the mission is already completed? I haven't even done anything yet." Maple Moon was shocked. She had handed the beacon to the army as the mission suggested. Without a doubt, this was definitely the work of the faction. Giving the beacon to the army was indeed the right decision. Don't just stand there, quickly control the field. Pork Bun was being swung around by the boss not far away, and his teammates were sent flying one after another. Maple Moon turned a blind eye to it and was immersed in her own thoughts. She had thought about it for the past few days. This mission only required her to come into contact with an unknown organization, so there would definitely be more to it. She immediately opened the faction mission list, and her eyes sparkled. As expected, there was indeed a follow-up mission, and it was a large-scale side mission issued by the dynasty. Great Cosmos Corps, such a Chunibu name. So, it's a raider organization. The mission requirement is to eliminate this organization. Looks like it's a group mission. There will definitely be many people participating. Maple Moon pondered. "Help me, ah." The boss pressed Pork Bun to the ground and punched his face again and again. Pork Bun could only shout one word each time when the boss stopped punching, and his cries for help were very rhythmic. With the last bit of health gone, Pork Bun turned into a beam of white light and died. Maple Moon came back to her senses, raised her head, and threw out a bunch of compressed orbs. A large number of mechanical creations drowned the boss. Not long after, the boss with only half of its HP left was killed by Maple Moon, who displayed her prowess. After playing 3 versions, she realized that she was quite talented in this area, and her PK skills were getting better and better. Furthermore, this version was the strongest period for the mechanic class, so it was much easier to clear map. Mechanics above level 100 were welcomed by most dungeon teams, and she was definitely the thigh of Pork Bun's team. Everyone exited the dungeon and returned to the army's battleship. Why did you get distracted? Pork Bun had a bitter look on his face. I didn't need to use 1 revival. Look at the faction mission. Pork Bun opened the faction interface in confusion and was overjoyed when he saw the mission eliminate the Great Cosmos Core. He then opened the forums and realized that the army players were already cheering on the forums. Although the exploration of the main storyline mission was full of unknowns and was quite interesting, the players spent most of their time in the spaceship, so there were very few fighter jets. Most of the players were very itchy and could only fight in the dungeons. Now that they finally had a chance to fight in the main storyline mission, all the army players were excited. Wiping out a force sounded like a big mission. Chapter 8:23 Flickering World, Renault Star Cluster, Geratin Star System. The joint exploration team of the Bloodshed Land and the Klent Kingdom was carrying out the plan step by step. The exploration fleet was like a paintbrush, slowly painting the gray unexplored areas on the star map into green. The Stargate transportation network in the first star zone was gradually built. The planets were explored one after another, and the detailed information was recorded in the database. A large number of space buoys were left in the areas they passed. The exploration process on the Bloodshed Lands side was peaceful. There were many resource-rich planets in the Geratin star system, but they had not encountered a single native civilization so far. Heber had been very idle for the past 10 days or so. The huge fleet worked according to the plan and did not need his command. He found a fixed star to train his energy. On a hot red fixed star in the star zone, Heber walked on the surface of the fixed star. The plasma energy of the fixed star formed a moving whirlpool and rotated around him. Under the stimulation of his energy, the cells in his body swallowed the intense radiation around him at a special rhythm and turned it into his own energy. Dazzling white patches appeared on his skin. The stellar furnace training method that Han Shao had drawn came from Heber. Every pugilist was addicted to fitness. They would feel uncomfortable if they did not train for a day. Heber exhaled and expelled the redundant energy in his body. What he spat out was an energy arc that looked like a red fen wind. With a stomp of his legs, the huge force turned into a shock wave that spread out. The red energy whirlpool around him was instantly shattered. Heber was wrapped in dense flames. He broke through the strong gravitational force of the fixed star and shot up like a beam of light toward the universe. He quickly left the outer area of the fixed star and returned to the fleet outside. Walking into the spaceship, Heber casually put on his cloak and took the communicator from his subordinate. It was a message from Klent. Your Excellency Tyrant, we just received news that the Commander-in-Chief has issued an order to the Black Star Corps, asking them to eliminate a native organization. Attack the local forces? Heber paused. The Empire's exploration rules forbid the use of violence. Our men on Planet Lighthouse have found out that Black Star's situation is special. That native organization is a group of raiders that occupied the center of the star cluster. They were coincidentally discovered by the Black Star Corps. The dynasty wants the planet's information that this native organization has accumulated, so the chief commander allowed the Black Star Corps to eliminate this organization. Hearing this, Heber frowned. While they were developing steadily, the Black Star Corps had already started fighting in the jungle. If the Black Star Corps were to obtain the accumulated intelligence of the local forces, it would be a great achievement. They would be able to obtain a large amount of information on the planet. Originally, the star system they had explored was more fertile, and the results of their exploration could have easily surpassed the Black Star Corps. Unfortunately, Black Star's luck was a little too good. Heber shook his head. He did not want to see the Black Star Corps obtain this result, but he could only watch. He could not help but feel a little depressed. Your Excellency Tyrant, our commander has a bold idea. This time, the Klent communicator spoke again. Dealing with Black Star again? That's right, we plan to. Alright, cut the crap. Before the other party could finish, Heber interrupted him. I've reached a truce agreement with the Black Star Corps, so I don't want to provoke them now. You guys better not do this either. It's meaningless. Then, he hung up the communicator. The Klent Kingdom was not willing to give up. They did not want their enemy, the Black Star Corps, to successfully obtain the credit. Heber did not want to mess around with them. The commander sent by Klent this time was from the radical faction of the Secret War, so he had a deep hostility toward Han Shao. He only wanted to steal the credit of the Black Star Corps and annoy Black Star. In Heber's eyes, not only was the success rate low, it would also cause the dissatisfaction of Black Star and the dynasty. Furthermore, it would not affect the Black Star Corps much, so it was not worth it. In the flickering world, Heber really did not want to be enemies with the Black Star. With such a huge cake, it would be better to just explore his own area. Trying to cause trouble for the Black Star Corps would only benefit the other dynasty allies who would participate in the exploration in the future. In Han Zhao's previous life, when the players entered the flickering world in version 4.0, many star clusters had already been explored. A large number of external organizations had entered and fought with each other, so the players had a lot of opportunities to fight. However, the situation was different now. It was only version 3.0 now. Han Shao allowed the players to come into contact with the storyline of the flickering world a version earlier. While gaining the upper hand, they also faced a different environment. In the early stages of exploration, there were only the Empire and their allies, and they were all on the same side. Therefore, the players lacked the storyline of faction wars and did not have many opportunities to fight. Therefore, as soon as the Destroy the Great Cosmos Corps mission was released, all the players who followed the Black Star Corps to explore the flickering world participated in this collective operation. There was no limit to the number of players, so most of them chose to participate. Han Shao was happy to see this happen. Because the players were in different exploration teams and were rather scattered, he casually arranged tens of thousands of spaceships to gather these players and form an expedition fleet. Only a small portion of this expedition fleet were army NPC warriors. Most of them were players. Because it would take quite some time to reach the central region of the Geru star cluster from here, Han Shao did not plan to let the players stay in the spaceship all the time, as that would be a waste of their high-quality labor. He planned to let this expedition team explore some of the planets along the way, making the best use of everything. Similarly, to make it easier for the players to return, they had to build stargates along the way. This way, the exploration plan of the Black Star Corps also changed. The main force would slowly explore the border star system. The first task force led by Hardaway would open up the path from the south to the east of the star cluster, and the second expedition team, led by the players, would open up the path from the south to the center of the star cluster. Therefore, the manpower of the army was once again thinned out. Han Shao ordered Sylvia, who was guarding the shattered Star Ring headquarters, to send out the second fleet as soon as possible to replenish the manpower of the exploration team. After the development of the previous two versions, the players now had grade B combat strength. The millions of army players were more than enough to hold their own, so Han Shao was quite assured. As the versions changed, the strength of the players would become stronger and stronger. They would gradually grow into an organization that could not be ignored. They would gradually get rid of their identity as cannon fodder and slowly walk onto the stage of the universe. After sending out the players' expedition fleet, Han Shao did not bother about them anymore. He commanded the fleet to explore the resource planets one by one every day and used his free time to expand his mechanical army. No accidents happened during this period, and everything was peaceful. Another 2 star zones were explored, and in the blink of an eye, more than a month had passed. On this day, Han Shao finally received a report from Philip. The players' expedition fleet heading toward the central region of the star cluster had finally met the scouts of the Great Cosmos Corps. The scouts were a team of players that were setting up space buoys. They only had a small reconnaissance spaceship that only carried about 300 players, while the scouts had 3 battleships. A battle broke out immediately. As soon as this scout fleet discovered this group of players, they immediately charged forward and engaged in a side battle, planning to capture the enemies with their advantage in numbers and interrogate the Black Star Corps. Cannonballs hit the shield of the small reconnaissance spaceship one after another, causing a series of explosions. However, the blinking shield did not move at all. Warning! Spaceship under attack. Shield energy remaining 97.1%, 99.7%. Charging complete. Evaluating threat. Evaluation complete. The enemy's firepower is unable to break through our shield. Threat level, extremely low. The hundreds of players in the spaceship exchanged looks. The spaceships of the Black Star Corps used perfect star system technology and even reached the star cluster level in some aspects, such as energy cores, weapons, and shield. In comparison, the spaceships of the Great Cosmos Corps were too backward. Without a huge difference in numbers, there was no way they could pose a threat to the spaceships of the Black Star Corps. The boarding battle was exactly what the hundreds of players wanted. After the 3 enemy scout spaceships got close, they were about to dock. At this moment, more than 10 ejection charge cabins shot out from the side of the small scout spaceship, biting through the 3 enemy spaceships and embedding themselves into the hull of the enemy spaceship. The players in the charge cabins were like ferocious tigers that had just been unleashed, slaughtering the enemy spaceship. This group of players was basically all above level 100, and the enemy spaceships were basically ordinary people. Not long after, the hundreds of players cleared out the enemies within the enemy spaceships and obtained the 3 spaceships. On the other side, Adamo, who was leading the army, also received news that one of the scout fleets had lost contact with them. However, he did not receive the information that the scout fleets should have sent back, and the strength of the Black Star Corps was still unknown to him. Before the scout fleets lost contact, they only sent back news of encountering the enemy. After that, the connection was cut off. "We don't know how they fought with the enemy," the aide-de-camp said with confusion. "It's the same as that time with Kikiga." Adamo narrowed his eyes, and a rare solemn look flashed through his eyes. The enemy's quantum technology might surpass ours. When the battle broke out, Philip had hacked into the enemy's artificial intelligence through the quantum network and forcefully blocked the enemy's communication to prevent the army's intelligence from being leaked. It was the same when Kikiga encountered Psionic Prime. Thus, Adamo still did not know how many spaceships the Black Star Corps had, and how strong they were. On the contrary, Philip had found out the location of Adamo's main force through the quantum network and was currently recalling the exploration team outside. He then ordered the expedition team to rush toward the enemy's main force. No matter what war it was, the importance of intelligence could not be ignored. The army's virtual technology was far superior to the enemy's, and the Great Cosmos Corps was like a bunch of blind men in comparison. Ever since he had dominated the universe, Adamo had never met an enemy that could make him feel pressured. However, the appearance of the Black Star Corps this time shook his confidence. This might be the strongest opponent he had ever met. "The Black Star Corps is not bad," Adamo said with a solemn tone. "I'm willing to call you the strongest. However, your outcome won't change at all after encountering my fleet." Adamo's eyes were cold and filled with confidence. This time, he had brought all his forces, a total of 100,000 battleships. This was the fleet that he had accumulated for many years, the foundation for his domination of the universe. In his mind, such a large fleet was more than enough to sweep through all enemies. Chapter 8:24. In the center of the Gerar star cluster, after encountering the scout team, the expedition team gathered all their troops, adjusted their direction, and jumped toward the location of Adamo's fleet. At the same time, Adamo's fleet was also heading toward the direction where the scout team had disappeared. The two teams were closing in on each other, and the distance between them kept decreasing. After 2 days of hyperdrive, the two teams finally met in an area of the universe. We finally found the enemy. In the tens of thousands of spaceships of the expedition team, the players looked at the densely packed metal battleships outside the porthole, and they could not help but feel energized. The players formed their own teams one after another. China's 4 big guilds and the first-rate guilds were no exception. The members of the clubs formed their own teams, while the core members of the guilds and the peripheral members sat in their spaceships to protect their own team members. This was not to protect them, but to help their own team snatch the boss. Annihilation of the Great Cosmos Core was a faction series mission, and there were many side missions. Most of them were team missions, and the ones with the highest rewards required the killing of the enemy's combatants, leaders, and even the number of these people was limited. This was especially so for Great Emperor Adamo. There was only one kill, and while it was not a solo mission, only one team could share the mission reward. Every club wanted to help their own team obtain the highest reward. The players of Dynasty, Temple of God, Long Sky, and Fried Eggplants were all in their own teams, and the 3 pillars of Long Sky were discussing their strategy. Sleepy Winter stroked his chin and said, according to the reward level, the enemy's leader, Adamo, should have grade A combat strength. We can only kill him with numbers. Twinkle Fried Rice said, if that's the case, the team that attacks him first will be in the most danger. If we want to snatch the kill, it's best for us to slack while dealing damage and let the others pull the aggro. Only the team with the highest damage output will be considered the kill. If we're killed by the boss, it'll take too much time to revive and run back. We can only deal damage if we're alive. Hao Tian nodded. That's right. On the other spaceship, Mad Blade also formed a team with his own team. He even pulled Maple Moon along, and the two of them had a good relationship. Mad Blade tilted his head and looked out the side window. Beside him were rows of battleships in formation. The guilds were clearly gathered together, clearly different from the normal players. Seeing this, Mad Blade shook his head helplessly. With so many guilds trying to snatch the boss, I think our chances are slim. Rivervale's vice-captain, Evil Sword, had high morale. As long as we don't die, we might not lose in terms of damage output. This kind of unique boss won't just stand there and wait for us to attack. Whoever deals more damage will be the biggest threat and will be attacked by the boss first. We might be able to survive until the end. The players were all experienced and knew that the bosses in Galaxy were very difficult to deal with. For normal people, battles were ever-changing, and they would rarely be aggroed by one person. Instead, they would attack whoever was more useful in the battle first. They would prioritize eliminating the most troublesome opponent. The battle style was very realistic. Therefore, when players fought bosses, it was very easy for the aggro to be messed up, and they had to improvise. Maple Moon smiled at the side and did not say anything. She looked around at the army and was secretly excited. Such a huge scene could be said to have been created by her, and she had single-handedly triggered the Faction Crusade mission. She was filled with a sense of accomplishment and joy. Because she was the one who triggered the Faction Crusade mission, compared to the other players, she had an independent mission. When the Great Cosmos Core was destroyed, she would receive additional rewards that the other players did not have. She would receive a large amount of experience and exploration points, 300 Red Empire contribution points, and 1,000 Black Star Corps contribution points. This was probably the reward for handing over the mission item to the country. This reward was extremely generous, and Maple Moon calculated that she might even become the highest level player in the game. Meanwhile, in the Russian and Australian troops, Vodka and Captain Old Henry led their guild members to prepare for battle. They also wanted to snatch the boss. Although the players from their respective clubs did not come along, if they could prevent the Chinese players from snatching the boss reward, it would be equivalent to helping their own players. Although the Russians and Australians had suffered some losses on planet Pangurus, they still had their responsibilities and did not wish for the Chinese players to be so arrogant in front of them. At the same time, Adamo, who was facing off against the expedition team, was also observing the Black Star Corps. The other party only has slightly more than 10,000 battleships, and we have the absolute advantage in numbers, the adjutant said. Adamo nodded. He had over 100,000 battleships, which was almost 10 times that of the enemy. The difference between the two parties was too huge. However, the Black Star Corps actually had 10,000 battleships, which was definitely not a small number. Adamo was shocked by this. In his impression, every battleship required a huge amount of resources to build, and the time required to build it was extremely long. The strongest race that he had met before only had a few hundred battleships. He originally thought that the quantum technology was the only advantage of the Black Star Corps, but he did not expect that the Black Star Corps' fleet was not weak either. No wonder they sealed off the information and did not want to let me know that they had such a large fleet. They probably wanted to catch me off guard. Adamo thought to himself as he broke out in cold sweat. In order to gather over 10,000 battleships, the enemy had definitely mobilized all of their forces. Luckily, he had brought all of his troops with him. If he had only sent a small team like usual, he would have been in deep trouble. Indeed, it was the right decision to go out personally. Adamo's eyes flashed and he slowly said, "Send a message to the other party. I want to talk to their leader." In his eyes, this was a battle where both sides had mobilized all of their forces. The army commander of the Black Star Corps had always been mysterious and had never appeared before. Adamo wanted to see what kind of person the army commander of the Black Star Corps was. To actually have over 10,000 battleships, he felt that this fellow had the right to talk to him. After a while, the adjutant said with a trembling voice, "The other party refused to talk to us. They said, what did they say?" Adamo narrowed his eyes. "They said that you don't have the right to talk to their army commander." Adamo laughed with a hoarse voice. He was not angry at all, and there was even a hint of mockery in his laughter. "I don't have the right? Who else is more qualified than me? Forget it, people are going to die anyway, so there's nothing to be calculative about." Adamo shook his head and lost interest in talking. He waved his hands and slowly said, "Attack and annihilate them." After the order was given, the 100,000 spaceships opened fire at the same time. Countless cannonballs were shot into the expedition team's formation like a storm, causing countless explosions. Adamo originally thought that he would see the enemy suffer heavy losses, but what happened next caused his eyes to freeze. When the flames dissipated, not a single one of the 10,000 battleships of the expedition team was destroyed. Although they were few in number, they wanted to surround the enemy fleet that was 10 times their size. The next moment, the 10,000 spaceships accelerated, and due to their speed being much faster than the spaceships of the super-large Cosmos Corps, Adamo's troops did not have much time to react before the 10,000 spaceships charged into their formation. This was the battle method that the players favored the most, and they were not willing to use the annihilation weapons of the spaceships to end the battle quickly because there was no experience to be gained. The players charged into the enemy's spaceships through the charge cabins and slaughtered all the members of the enemy's spaceships. The concentrated fire of the enemy's spaceships could not break through the shields of the army's spaceships, and the players were not worried about being surrounded at all. There was only one thought left in their minds: dance with my peerless chaos. The majority of the players had never experienced such an exhilarating experience before. With the superiority of the faction's technology, this battle was like a grass-cutting game. The 10,000 spaceships charged through the Great Cosmos Corps' fleet and charged toward the center of Atomos' fleet. No one could stop them, and the enemy's formation was instantly torn apart. Charging felt good for a moment, but charging continuously felt good. In the flagship of the fleet, Atomos stood up and tore off his mask. His expression changed drastically, and disbelief filled his face. Their weapons were completely useless against the enemy. In just a short while, close to 20,000 battleships had been captured by the enemy, and not a single enemy spaceship had been destroyed. This is impossible. How can there be such a huge difference in technology? How can they all be supers? Atomo was no longer as calm as before. He suddenly realized that he had hit an iron wall this time. The enemy was a civilization that was even more advanced than him, a civilization that could completely crush him. He had been rampaging in this universe for far too long, and he had not met an opponent that could threaten him for a long time. He had long forgotten what respect and fear were. Now, the scenes of his fleet collapsing had once again awakened the taste of fear in his heart. His hands that had once killed countless living beings could not help but tremble. He saw the future of his entire fleet being wiped out. Atomos suddenly remembered something from a long time ago. Back then, the Great Cosmos Corps was just an ordinary wandering civilization with only a few spaceships. They were still very weak, carefully exploring the universe, overcoming difficulties time after time, and gradually becoming stronger. However, he did not know when it started, but he had actually lost this caution that he relied on to survive. If he had not been so reckless and planned properly before the battle, if he had not been so arrogant and cautiously sent people to investigate, if he had not been so easily angered and affected by the provocation of the Black Star Corps, perhaps the current outcome would not have occurred. However, he did not know that this was just his own wishful thinking. In front of overwhelming strength and intelligence, no matter how much he tried to act, the objective outcome would not have changed. Now, no matter how much Atomo regretted, it was useless. The excited players wantonly slaughtered and destroyed Atomos' fleet. The casualties quickly exceeded 1/3. The army was defeated like a landslide. The overwhelming combat power caused the remaining enemy ships to lose their courage. No one wanted to stay behind and be slaughtered. They all began to flee. The huge fleet fell apart and fled in all directions. Retreat! Retreat! Atomo came back to his senses and hurriedly roared out the order. Very quickly, the main ship and the surrounding frigates turned around and joined the fleeing army. The Great Cosmos Corps had arrived aggressively and fled in panic. It had only taken them less than 20 minutes to do so. The spaceships of the various large guilds abandoned the fleeing enemy spaceships and went straight for the main ship. Everyone wanted to snatch the head of this boss. As for the enemy spaceships that were fleeing in other directions, they were chased down by many ordinary players who had not completed the requirements of the other branches and were quickly nibbled away. Philip had already locked onto the position of every single battleship through the quantum link. Even if the enemies could escape now, there would still be players chasing after them. When the battle started, Philip had hacked into the database of the main ship and copied all the information of the Great Cosmos Corps, including the information of the various planets that they had plundered over the years. The dynasty had already obtained the information that they needed, and all that was left was to eliminate the source of the problem. Philip would only provide support and leave the rest to the players. Very quickly, the fleeing fleet that Atomo was in was left alone. He only had a few hundred frigates around him, and he could only flee pathetically. Philip controlled the spaceship of Atomo and the others remotely and forced them to land on a desolate planet. The pursuing players descended and surrounded Atomo. At the center of a fresh crater, The main ship, that was the size of a mountain range, was stabbed into the ground with black smoke billowing out. Countless parts and the wreckage of the other frigates were scattered around. This ship was Adamo's flagship, and when Philip forced them to land, he had very considerately turned off the engine of the enemy ship to save them energy. Ka. Figures walked out from the wreckage of the battleship, one after another. The armor on their bodies had helped them resist the impact, but it was almost completely destroyed. However, the fall from such a high altitude still killed most of the ordinary members, and less than 10% of them survived. The wreckage of the battleship was on fire, and black smoke billowed out. Adamo held his head as he walked out. Even with his strength, he was still dizzy from the fall, and every bone in his body was aching. Looking at the heavy casualties around him, Adamo could not help but look around with a blank expression. Right at this moment, a huge gust of wind blew, and army battleships descended along the edge of the crater, surrounding Adamo and everyone else. Adamo raised his head and looked around. Countless figures appeared on the towering cliffs around him. They were all players chasing after him, and countless lustful gazes locked onto him. There were more than 300,000 players in the first wave, including the players from the various large guilds. I can't escape. Adamo was a prideful person, and facing such a situation, he could not help but feel grief and anger. You want to kill me? Come on then. The next moment, Adamo suddenly roared, and the dozen or so mechanical tentacles behind him opened up like a peacock spreading its tail. Yellow laser beams shot out in all directions at an astonishing speed. This was the weapon that he always carried around with him, and it was used to help him control his Esper ability. His Esper ability allowed him to shoot energy lasers through his body, and the form of the attack would change according to the area of the laser beam. For example, if he shot from his palm, it would turn into an energy shockwave, and if he used his fingers, toes, tentacles, and other parts of his body, he would be able to shoot accurate beams. In close combat, his fists and legs could also be imbued with energy attack. If he released energy from his entire body, it would turn into a shield. This was a very practical Esper ability. Adamo was the strongest individual in the Great Cosmos Corps, and his Calamity-grade Esper ability allowed his lasers to be far more powerful than ordinary energy weapons. He could be said to be a super-humanoid cannon. His arrogance stemmed from his confidence in his own strength. Among the natives of the flickering world, there were very few who had reached the Calamity grade, and he had never met an opponent who could wipe out an entire planet all by himself. While he was surrounded, Adamo did not lose all hope. He was very confident in his own strength. While these enemies were all supers, none of them seemed to be his match. If he could kill all these pursuers, he might still have a chance of survival. With that thought in mind, Adamo regained his morale, and he began to attack crazily. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As the lasers shot out, the players hurriedly dodged. These lasers struck the ground, creating huge craters with a diameter of dozens of meters. If a level 100 or above player was hit, while they would not be killed instantly, they would be left with only a sliver of health. He was indeed a Calamity-grade super. The hearts of the players tightened. This was the first time they had ganged up on a Calamity-grade super without the help of an NPC. Everyone was a little uncertain. They had seen quite a number of elite Calamity-grade supers in the Secret War, and almost all of them could kill them instantly. No one knew if they could kill a proper Calamity-grade supers with their current level. It's time to fight the boss. Without much hesitation, more than 300,000 players jumped down from the mountain walls in all directions and began to charge. Whether they could win or not, they would know after charging forward. Since they were not going to die, they might as well charge forward. Chapter 825. At the same time that the Adamo fleet was destroyed, Han Shao, who was slacking at the border of the Geru star cluster, received the intelligence sent back by Philip. The information about the planets that the Great Cosmos Core had accumulated was also sent back. Let me see how much I've gained. Han Xiao opened the information and browsed through it. Although the Great Cosmos Core was just a castle in the sky, they had discovered quite a number of planets over the years, scattered across a few star systems in the middle of the Geru star cluster. Some of the planets originally had native civilizations, but they were all enslaved by the Great Cosmos Core. Their internal information was not like the information that the Red Empire had in his previous life. This information recorded the process of the Great Cosmos Core's plundering in detail, including video footage, which was filled with bloodshed. Shaking his head, Han Xiao contacted Chief Commander Terakov. I've obtained the information about the Great Cosmos Core. I've sent you a copy. Good job. Terakov was overjoyed. He quickly browsed through it and smiled. The dynasty will remember your contribution. Before Han Xiao could say anything, a notification appeared on the interface. You have submitted Great Cosmos Core Exploration Information, plus 1,500 Red Empire contribution point, plus 550 personal exploration point. Flickering World. First round evaluation increased by 1 grade. The Flickering World main storyline mission was a faction mission, and exploring Geru was the first round. All the players shared the mission evaluation, and the mission evaluation depended on everyone's total exploration point. This was a special exploration achievement. After more than a month of exploration, everyone's mission evaluation was originally D-, but now, everyone's evaluation had been raised to D. It did not seem like much, but this was a grade S+ main storyline mission. Every small increase in evaluation would take a long time, and it would only get more difficult toward the end. However, the 1,500 Red Empire contribution points was the reward that made Han Xiao excited. He had spent 6,000 contribution points to exchange for the ultimate knowledge, Mechanical Life Tinder, and he still had 2,000 plus contribution points left. Now that he had obtained 1,500 contribution points in one go, he only needed to obtain another 2,000 contribution points to exchange for a new ultimate knowledge. Due to his status, the cost of exchanging for ultimate knowledge was discounted by half. In his previous life, an ordinary player would have needed 12,000 contribution points to exchange for a new ultimate knowledge. However, when normal players joined the Red Empire, they would be able to obtain military rank. As they continued to do missions to increase their ranks, they would be able to enjoy more and more discounts. However, even if they were promoted to the highest rank, they would not be able to reach the 50% discount that he had. The hidden mission brought by Maple Moon made him a little fatter. Han Xiaoxin was very happy. Not only did such a capable player need to be rewarded, he also needed to be rewarded handsomely. It was a good opportunity to motivate other players to explore the hidden quest. No one would be rich without a windfall. That was why it was said that being a jungler was still very lucrative. While he was looking at the interface, Terakov did not stop and said, "This intelligence can save us a lot of manpower. I will get someone to record this information into the star map. Since you have already sent people to destroy the Great Cosmos Core, you will temporarily take over their territory. Since you have chosen to spread out, leave a team to develop in the center of the Geru star cluster." Sure. Han Xiao smiled. This was the reason why he had come along. Compared to the planets at the edge of the star cluster, the center of the star cluster would be the most prosperous region in the future. In order to destroy the Great Cosmos Core, the expedition team had officially established a long-distance channel. When the time came, he would be able to directly head to the center of the star cluster and occupy all the most famous planets in his previous life. If he occupied the territory first, the other dynasty allies would not be able to snatch it from him and would have to take a detour. As long as he occupied the most prosperous regions in the star cluster, he would be able to earn the most. Furthermore, with the first long-distance channel as a foundation, he would not attract any suspicion when he went to the east of the star cluster to steal universal treasures in the future. Terekov then said that he would report this to the dynasty and ask them to reward the Black Star Corps with additional resources. The two of them chatted for a while before hanging up. Han Xiao then connected to Philip's vision. Only then did he have the time to look at the battlefield many star systems away to see how the players were fighting with Adamo. Boom! Boom! Explosions occurred one after another. Wave after wave of people surged forward and charged towards Adamo along the walls of the ring-shaped mountain like a tidal wave. Adamo fought alone and weaved through the crowd to avoid the attacks. Countless energy beams shot out from various parts of his body like a mobile cannon, shooting toward the crowd in all directions. Beams of light swept across the crowded battlefield, striking different locations and causing violent explosions, sending the shielded figures flying. The battle had already lasted for quite some time, and countless players were using their abilities. All sorts of lights flashed on the battlefield, and all sorts of abilities appeared one after another. The number of debuffs on Adamo had never dropped below 30. Although the duration was short, there were too many players, and the debuffs were constantly refreshed. The difference in level was too great, and Adamo had the advantage in speed. He constantly changed his position, and the players were unable to lock onto him or hold his aggro. It was as though the players in different regions were randomly attacked by Adamo. As long as they encountered him, the players who had just reached grade B would not be able to tank his damage. Normally, the players would fight a dungeon boss in a dungeon with a few dozen people. This was the first time that hundreds of thousands of players were fighting against a real character of such a high level. Every single team wanted to do as much damage as possible, and they did not care about friendly fire. The difficulty of this battle was much higher than what the players had expected. All the strategies that they had thought of before the battle were basically useless, and they could only improvise. However, what the players did not know was that the pressure that Adamo was facing was countless times greater than theirs. He shuttled through the crowd. Originally, he wanted to use the crowd as a meat shield to make this group of enemies hesitate and worry about accidentally injuring them. But he was shocked to find that this group of people did not care about the life or death of their comrade. They were willing to blow up their comrades to attack him. Even Adamo, who had a cold personality, was shocked by the players. He clearly had no way to escape, and the enemy had the upper hand, but they still chose to attack without any regard for their own lives. This is too cold-blooded. The Black Star Corps is actually so unscrupulous. The players were not afraid of death, and his strategy was completely useless. Adamo could only endure a sea of attacks at every moment, and he had no choice but to expend energy to maintain his shield. The attacks of the players were only at grade B, but he did not dare take so much damage with his body. After all, he did not have a strong physique. His shield was not able to block out all the damage, especially the psychic attacks. Most of the negative statuses that he had received were from the psychic. Adamo also had quite a few light injuries on his body, and his health was slowly decreasing. He did not have a high recovery ability, and even if he used his energy to stimulate his cells, his regeneration speed would not be able to keep up with his health. Furthermore, with his energy being depleted so quickly, he felt that his chances of killing all the enemies were getting slimmer and slimmer. Although that was what he thought in his heart, as long as there was even the slightest chance of survival, Adamo did not want to wait for death. Even if I can't escape, I have to deal a huge amount of damage to your supers. Adamo swore in his heart. Even if he was going to die, he had to bite off a piece of meat from the Black Star Corps. Since they were fighting so crazily, he would be able to deal as much damage as possible to them. Adamo's figure flashed and moved to another area. Suddenly, a series of mechanical traps appeared under his feet, and a strong magnetic field grabbed onto his body, creating an extremely strong restraining force that slowed down his movements. "Come over, I've caught him." One of the players was overjoyed. 2-2-2-2. The turrets surrounded by the mechanical force of different players all turned around and fired at Adamo. A dense rain of bullets was fired at him. Adamo let out a low roar, and the energy shield solidified once again. The rain of bullets hit the shield, creating sparks and sparks. Rumble! Energy shot out from his tentacles and fingers like a peacock spreading its tail, instantly destroying the turrets that were attacking him. Following which, he stomped his feet and released an energy shockwave, shattering the mechanical traps that were grabbing onto him and regaining his freedom. Just as Adamo was about to retreat, he suddenly felt dizzy. More than 10 psychics rushed over and threw mental shockwaves at him. During that short moment of delay, a large group of pugilists charged forward, and their fists smashed onto the shield like cannonballs. Bang bang bang! The shield started to flicker, and Adamo gritted his teeth. Many of his tentacles swept out like whips, and along with the trajectory of the attack, a powerful shock wave blasted away the pugilists who were entangling him, smashing into a large group of people. Fighting on the ground was very disadvantageous for him, and Adamo tried to fly again. However, he felt an immense pressure when he was only 10 meters above the ground, and his movements became extremely slow. Looking up, there were countless magic arrays floating in the sky, stacked with countless anti-gravity spells. Even if the spells of a grade B mage were stacked together, they would not be able to trap a calamity grade super. However, it would take Adamo a lot of time to pass through the anti-gravity zone, and he did not dare do so as he would easily become a target. Furthermore, even if he could fly, if he did not kill all these pursuers, they would still chase after him with their spaceship. He did not feel that his flying speed was faster than a spaceship, so where could he escape to on this planet? Both parties fought a bloody battle, and after who knew how long, Adamo was completely exhausted. He could not remember how many enemies he had killed, probably in the tens of thousands. Furthermore, the enemies had probably injured many times more people than he had killed. A bunch of lunatics. Adamo spat out a mouthful of blood and dragged his heavy body to continue fighting. His energy was almost depleted, and the injuries all over his body were getting worse and worse. "Looks like I don't have a chance." Adamo's heart sank, and he became even more ferocious. At the very least, the enemies had suffered heavy casualties. Even if he died, he would drag a bunch of people down with him. However, right at this moment, Adamo dodged another round of attacks. Looking at the densely packed crowd around him, he suddenly realized something that he had neglected while immersed in the battle. After fighting for so long, he should have killed a lot of enemies. The enemies clearly did not send any reinforcements, so why did the number of enemies not seem to have changed? Adamo was stunned. In his worldview, if a person died, they would definitely die. He did not have the concept of resurrection, so he did not pay attention to the situation. However, the battlefield was so chaotic, and there were more than 300,000 enemies. He did not have the time to distinguish who he was facing at all. Furthermore, he was in a very dangerous situation, so he could not divert his attention and only noticed this strange situation now. After noticing this situation, Adamo carefully observed for a while, and his expression suddenly changed. These people are actually undying? Adamo's eyes widened in disbelief. A deep sense of despair passed through his body like a bolt of lightning, and a deep sense of helplessness appeared in his heart. No wonder they did not care about the casualties. Turned out that these people did not have the concept of casualties at all. He thought that he had caused a lot of damage to the enemies, but it turned out that it was just his own wishful thinking. His resistance was just a futile struggle. If it was just that there were too many enemies, Adamo would still have the desire to fight to the death. However, when he realized that the enemies could actually resurrect, Adamo's mentality collapsed, and his will to fight disappeared. Ah! Adamo no longer had any hope of surviving. He roared toward the sky and unleashed all of the remaining energy in his body without holding back. Rumble! Over a dozen thick pillars of light swept across the battlefield, instantly killing anyone who came into contact with them. In the blink of an eye, the pillars of light cleared out a large area of the battlefield. Just this one attack had killed over 10,000 players. Attention! All of you, get down. This should be the final stage of the boss, and it's about to enter the killing zone. The players hurriedly turned into Voldemort, and the pillars of light swept past their heads. Just the shock waves from the pillars of light were enough to deal a certain amount of damage to them. The more than 10 pillars of light quickly dissipated, and Adamo finally squeezed himself dry. He wobbled as if he would fall to the ground at any moment. Bang! The next moment, an artillery shell blasted Adamo to the ground. When the players saw that, they hurriedly got up and swarmed toward Adamo, fighting for an advantageous position and attacking Adamo. Adamo, who had lost all ability to fight back, was like a doll being fought over by a group of people. His limbs were quickly torn off, and he allowed the players to torture his body. His eyes became more and more lifeless, and the faces of the players around him were like that of a demon in his eyes. When Adamo was on the verge of death, he suddenly hallucinated. The faces of the players around him changed, and it was as if they had all turned into his face. He was in a daze, and his plundering life for so many years appeared in his mind. Could this be retribution? Poochie! The next moment, his vision spun, and his head was pulled off by someone. The life in Adamo's eyes quickly disappeared, and only a grayish-white color was left. He had lost all signs of life. Ha ha ha! The reward for killing him is ours! The players from Dynasty cheered. Second Prince was overjoyed. In his excitement, he kicked Adamo's head away like a ball, and King Admiral shook his head helplessly. Tisk, it's actually Dynasty. I died 3 times, and I didn't even get to touch anything. What a loss. Why don't we get rid of them here? The pro players from the other guilds glared at Dynasty. Vodka and Captain Old Henry were a little disappointed. The reward for killing the boss had actually been taken away by the previous champion club. It would have been fine even if it was given to some other small club. Dynasty would probably be a strong opponent in this season's Pro League. During the chaotic battle earlier, they had aimed their attacks at the Chinese teams, wanting to pretend that they had accidentally injured their teammates. However, they realized that they had also suffered a lot of accidental injuries, dying about 3 times on average. They guessed that they had also been targeted by the Chinese guild. Although the ordinary players did not receive the reward, they were still very excited. Adamo was the first true Calamity grade boss to die by their hands. This was the first time the players had killed a Calamity grade super. On the other side, Han Xiao also received Philip's report and heaved a sigh of relief. We've finally killed a Calamity grade super. If it was a Calamity grade super like Ashes, the players would not be able to kill him even if they used up all their revivals. However, Adamo did not have such a perverted ability. He was only an ordinary Calamity grade super. Philip had caused his spaceship to crash, and the players had spaceships to chase after him. Thus, he had no way to escape and could only face the players head-on. Furthermore, the players already had grade B combat strength, so Adamo could only die in the end. In Han Zhao's eyes, this matter was a milestone for the players, and it was also a turning point for the players. In his previous life, the players had only killed their first Calamity grade super in version 4.0. After that, the players all knew that they had the strength to threaten ordinary Calamity grades. Their mentality changed, and they became more confident as well as more suicidal. This was something that could not be avoided. The players were too subjective, and they would have such thoughts sooner or later. However, the effect on Han Xiao was very limited at the moment. His strength and influence were enough to suppress the little demons in the hearts of most players. He had purposely gotten the players to deal with Adamo so that they could kill a Calamity Grade Super as members of the Black Star Corps. If not for Philip's help, they would not have been able to stop Adamo from escaping, and they would not have been able to kill the first Calamity Grade Super. Thus, this first kill was the result of both the players and the faction. As long as the players understood this point, it would increase their sense of belonging to the faction. Furthermore, this first kill was a milestone and the first collective action of the army. Through the collective memory of this achievement, it might strengthen the bond that many people had with the army. Chapter 8:26. After killing Adamo, though he destroyed the Great Cosmos Core, mission did not end immediately. There were still other players chasing after the fish that escaped to other places. After the battle ended, the hundreds of thousands of players on the battlefield checked their interfaces, and quite a few of them saw a notification that only popped up during the battle. Black Star Corps submitted, Great Cosmos Core Exploration Information. Flickering World. First round rating increased by 1 small grade. The Flickering World main storyline mission had a similar rating, and not only did Han Shao receive this notification, the other players also received it and were overjoyed. The army was helping them expand the rewards of the battle. The players present were overjoyed. After this mission ended, the exploration points accumulated by all the players would probably be able to raise the rating of the first round of the main storyline mission from D to C. Other than the players, there were no other living beings on the battlefield. The players scattered across the battlefield and entered the wreckage of the enemy battleships to search for loot. Although the technological level of the Great Cosmos Corps was far inferior to the Black Star Corps, the players never left empty-handed and swept through everything of value like locusts. After looting the corpses for a while, the hundreds of thousands of players left in their spaceship. This crater was filled with burn marks, and there were huge craters everywhere. Wreckage of battleships was stabbed into the ground and black smoke billowed. Spaceships carrying players rose into the sky and left the planet. They waved their hands and left the planet, leaving behind only the ruins of the battle and the corpses that no one cared about. On the forums, many of the players who had participated in killing Adamo started to boast about the first blood. As the first Calamity Grade Super that they had killed, Adamo was extremely memorable, and someone immediately recorded this event in the Shattered Star Rings Chronicles. In Galaxy Calendar Year 705, Adamo's first blood was completed. Of course, there were some who were proud. It had already been 3 versions, and everyone had seen a Calamity Grade for the first time in version 2.0. During the Secret War in version 3.0, they had personally participated in a battlefield with a Calamity Grade. The strength of a Calamity Grade was deeply ingrained in their hearts, and they had finally killed one. Although they were surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people, and the other party was a native, and they had relied on the army to prevent the other party from escaping, the players were still very excited. Someone had analyzed a long time ago that as long as the combat power system did not change, as the upper limit of the level would continue to increase, their importance in the galaxy would also increase. This first clear was the new evidence for this theory. Many players couldn't help but look forward to the future versions. Maybe one day we can punch Heber and kick Cisco? It was a pity that Han Shao did not know about the ambitions of these players. Otherwise, he would have let them continue to sleep and dream about everything. Dynasty was the one who took the kill reward. As one of China's oldest clubs, no one was surprised that they took Adamo's first kill. In reality, no matter which of the 4 great guilds obtained the kill, it would be normal in their eyes. If any other guild or even an ordinary player obtained the kill, they would be considered lucky. Many players were envious when they saw the kill rewards and mission rewards posted by Dynasty's official platform. The ones who were envious the most were the other guild. This was the first kill of a calamity-grade superboss they were talking about. The rewards were secondary. The fame that came from the first kill was what the various large guilds wanted. This was the glory of the guild, and could be used to attract members. Even if they defeated a new calamity-grade boss in the future, it would not be as significant as the first kill. Second Prince was very pleased with himself and posted a screenshot of the moment of the kill. He was the one who dealt the final blow, and he could not help but brag about it on the forums, causing everyone to be envious. Although he was a pro player, he had never paid attention to building his image. As the second in the Dynasty team, he had always wanted to rise above King Admiral and gave people the impression that he was both mischievous and arrogant. However, as Maple Moon revealed her mission under Frenzied Sword's instigation, all of the players' attention was drawn away from Second Prince. The screenshot that Maple Moon posted included her discovery of the beacon and her independent mission as the instigator of this incident. Many players originally thought that the Black Star Corps attacking the Great Cosmos Corps was ordered by the Dynasty. However, after seeing Maple Moon's screenshot, they were shocked to realize that the army's large-scale attack this time was actually a storyline created by a player. This seemed to be the first time that a player had such a huge impact on the army. Oh my god, this was actually a hidden mission triggered by a player? Maple Moon? This name sounds familiar. Aren't they the 4 people who followed the army commander in the earliest version? To be able to discover such a good hidden mission, they are really lucky. Many players were envious of Maple Moon again. In the past 2 versions, Maple Moon had not revealed herself, but she had suddenly become famous. In Han Zhao's previous life, Maple Moon was already famous for discovering hidden storylines, and she gradually became famous in version 3.0, becoming a dark horse in the 3rd Galaxy Pro League. This was not strange at all. There were dark horses every year, and there were especially many in the 3rd Galaxy Pro League. Because version 3.0 was the rise of the mechanic class, 80% of the dark horses were mechanic players who had very embarrassing results in the previous 2 Galaxy Pro League. The reward for her solo mission this time was extremely generous, and it was even more than killing Adamo. This made the spectators on the forums green with envy. She did not even need to kill the boss, and she only needed to slack by the side to obtain more rewards than killing the boss? That was too profitable. Second Prince immediately became listless. He stopped showing off and joined the envious crowd. Compared to the other professional players who were cold and aloof, he was much more active. He liked to mingle with the crowd in various senses of the word. These were not the only screenshots of Maple Moon. There were also the rewards that Black Star had given her through the faction interface. You have triggered the faction mission Black Star's Generosity. Mission completed. Due to your contribution, your faction Black Star Corps has received an exploration achievement. Black Star's favorability toward you has increased by 10 points. You have received 25 million EXP, 200,000 ANAs, and 2,000 Black Star Corps contribution points. Your army rank has increased by 1. You have received a new army title, Merit Explorer. Looking at the rewards given to Maple Moon by the army, countless spectators were drooling. Oh my god, the army's reward was even better. 200,000 ANAs was not a small amount, and there was even an independent army title. The effects of this title were way too tempting. You could receive 500 ANAs every day, 15,000 ANAs a month, and 180,000 ANAs a year. The long-term benefits were very impressive. Furthermore, you could receive money while sitting at home. They had always been the ones spending money in the army. This was the first time they had seen someone receiving money from the army. The meaning of Han Zhao's mission was very clear. Did you see that? This is the treatment of a meritorious person. Secret Explorer and Merit Explorer were both army titles, but Secret Explorer and Merit Explorer were different. The former was given to all the players who participated in the Secret War, while the latter was a unique title that only Maple Moon and Scorpion Daddy had. This also confirmed one of their guesses. As long as the method was right, the players could also indirectly influence the actions of a faction. Many people became excited. Through Maple Moon's screenshot, the players understood how to replicate this incident. The only way was to find hidden missions and hand them over to the army. Now that the army is exploring the flickering world, as long as we can find hidden elements similar to the Great Cosmos Core, we can also get the Merit Explorer title, right? That's definitely the case. The army has such an achievement title to encourage the members to carefully dig for hidden clues. With Maple Moon as an example, countless players were stimulated, and their passion for hidden missions was ignited. They could not wait to immediately explore the planet and dig 3 feet into the ground to find hidden missions. Looking at the red-eyed spectators on the forums, Han Xiaoxin was secretly overjoyed and chuckled. He had given Maple Moon a title alone, which had both glory and benefit. This was to encourage the other players to find hidden missions and hand them over to him. After all, finding hidden missions was the specialty of the players with the interface. Perhaps his second Bold Explorer fragment would fall into the hands of these players. Other than that, he also had the intention of grooming Maple Moon. In his previous life, this lady was one of the representatives of the rise of the mechanic class in version 3.0. As a great teacher of the mechanic class, if the overall results of the mechanic class were better in this Pro League, he would be able to trick Ahem, attract more new players to choose the mechanic class, and he would have more high-quality leaks to harvest. Maple Moon was a dark horse in this Pro League, and Han Xiao did not mind making this dark horse even darker. With so many rewards, Maple Moon would probably be the first player to reach the max level. The players were still chasing after the remnants of the Great Cosmos Core. They would then go and take over the other party's territory according to the information, so there would not be any problems. Han Xiao stopped paying attention and let the players do as they pleased. Looking around, other than the operators, there were only 2 officers in the room, Aurora and Fu Ding. Aurora was sitting in front of the control panel, her head drooping as if she was about to fall asleep. She did not need to manage the autopilot, so she was already dozing off. On the other side, Fu Ding was sitting on the sofa, resting with his eyes closed. It was unknown if he was training his psychic energy or chatting with Chern Xing in his mind. The other Black Star Guards, under the leadership of Hela, spent all day fighting in the combat training room. The exploration had already been going on for more than a month, and after the initial novelty, they no longer paid attention to the exploration progress. Hela could not stand standing beside Han Xiao and slacking with him every day, so she dragged the other Black Star Guards into training mode every day. A motivated career woman is still quite charming. Han Xiao shook his head, entered the quantum network, and contacted Blue Star. The Black Star Corps' quantum network base station in the Dawn Star Cluster had already been built, and he could already contact the people in the Shattered Star Ring through the Army's internal communication channel. He did not need to go through the Red Empire as an intermediary. Floating Dragon had already settled down in Blue Star for more than a month, so he contacted Blue Star mainly to ask about the situation on Floating Dragon Island. It didn't take long for Bennett to come online. After not contacting him for a while, Bennett's voice sounded high-spirited and full of motivation. Bennett reported the situation. In the past month, Floating Dragon had started to expand, and a large number of people and financial groups had come. Blue Star was affected by this and welcomed a new development opportunity. With the current speed of Blue Star's development, Bennett felt that he could bring forward the alien colonization plan that he had only planned to propose a few decades later. For a surface civilization, this was not easy, but with the help of so many galactic organizations, colonizing an alien planet was much easier than slowly climbing the technology tree. With the protection of Floating Dragon, the safety of the alien colonization was guaranteed. Bennett planned to use 5 years to digest the benefits that floating Dragon Island had brought him before officially starting Blue Star's alien colonization plan. He called it the 5-year plan. Han Xiao could not help but tremble when he heard it. After reporting the development of Blue Star, Bennett brought up another matter. About the Star Pupil Protoss militants who tried to attack Blue Star more than a month ago, I have already prepared the materials and evidence. I plan to bring it up in the Shattered Star Ring Civilization Conference and condemn the Star Pupil Protoss. Not bad. Since you have this identity, you should make good use of it. Han Xiao nodded. Cisco's people had done something wrong, so there was nothing wrong with letting him take the blame. I will attend the conference through remote projection. Black Star, is it convenient for you to attend the conference through remote projection as well? Bennett wanted to find someone to hold the fort. After all, Cisco was a Beyond Grade A, and he felt that he was not qualified. Since Black Star was the representative of Blue Star, it was normal for them to attend the conference together. Me? Haha, of course it's convenient for me. I've been very free recently. Han Xiao chuckled. Attending the conference personally was not a bad idea. He could see Cisco's pained expression. He did not seem to have such an organ. Chapter 8:27. The Shattered Star Ring Civilization Conference was a civilization alliance led by the 7 star cluster civilizations in the Shattered Star Ring. It was set up to facilitate the management of the star field. The 3 universal civilizations usually would not interfere with the daily affairs of the other star field. Most of the time, the star cluster or supercluster civilizations in the star field were the executive directors. The executive directors of the Shattered Star Ring were the 7 star cluster civilizations, and they were in charge of mediating the conflicts between the members of the various star system civilizations. Although the goal was for everyone to resolve their conflicts, most of the time, the Civilization Conference was just a large-scale quarrel. They could fight over any trivial matter, and there were not many times when they could actually resolve problems. In the Secret War not long ago, even Purple Crystal and Clent, who were the referees, had personally gone down to tear each other's faces. The Civilization Conference in the Shattered Star Ring was obvious. After all, the Shattered Star Ring was one of the chaotic borders of the explored universe, and the way they did things was much more brutal than the other star field. A long time ago, the various civilizations would send their ambassadors to attend the conference personally. There was one time when the 7 star cluster civilizations could not stand the brawls and decided to participate in the conference through remote projections. Everyone was just a projection, and no one could hit anyone. If they had the ability, they could come and hit them through the network cable. Such examples did exist. In any case, the Civilization Conference would be held regularly to resolve the backlog of events. The most recent conference would be held a few days later, and this would be the first time the Blue Star Civilization had participated in it. Normally, only civilizations that had reached the star system level would be able to enter the conference. However, Han Xiao had made a deal with the various star cluster civilizations and allowed the Blue Star Civilization to enter the conference. They were the only surface civilization in the Shattered Star Ring to participate in the conference, and the representative was Han Xiao himself. A few days later, the conference was held as scheduled. Han Xiao received a notification from the Amethyst Civilization and connected to the conference hall through the internal channel. He logged into his remote projection account. Buzz buzz. A buzzing sound could be heard, and a light flashed before Han Xiao's eyes. The next moment, he shared the vision of the conference hall with the remote projection. In front of him was a ring-shaped venue, a little like the structure of a coliseum. The black tables and chairs on each floor were seamlessly connected rings. The center was the lowest, and gradually rose from the inside to the outside. The rings were stacked layer by layer, forming a staircase. There was no blind spot at any seat, and everything could be seen at a glance. The dome of the venue was surrounded by a starry sky, which should be an indoor simulation. The scene was a thumbnail of the shattered star ring, which looked rather grand. Han Shao lowered his head and found that his remote projection was already sitting in his seat. Beside him was Bennett's projection. On the table in front of them was the metal nameplate of Blue Star. The two of them were seated at a higher level. Looking around the venue, the remote projections of the various representatives of the various civilizations were coming online one after another, appearing in the empty seat. The seats of the representatives of the different civilizations were some distance apart, not sitting close to each other. This is the venue of the Shattered Star Ring Civilization Conference. Bennett was amazed. He then turned to look at Han Shao, nodded, and greeted him. Black Star, you're finally online. It hasn't started yet. I'm early. Han Shao looked down and glanced at the center of the venue. The projections of the representatives of the 7-star cluster civilizations were already online, waiting for all the members to arrive. Han Shao retracted his gaze, turned around, and asked, "How long have you been here?" "I'm one of the earliest people to arrive." Bennett's tone was filled with emotion. "This is my first time attending a conference of this level, so I'm a little nervous." Of course, he would not be nervous because of such a big occasion. Instead, he felt heavy-hearted when he thought about the responsibility of the Blue Star civilization. "This is also my first time personally attending a civilization conference." Han Shao smiled. All the famous civilizations of a star field were gathered in one place. Such a scene with extremely high participation requirements was something that most players in his previous life had never experienced, and he was no exception. "Black Star, thank you." Bennett's tone suddenly became solemn. "If not for you, Blue Star would have to spend hundreds or even thousands of years to sit in this position." "You're welcome. We're just taking what we need." Han Shao was not pretentious and made it clear that he was doing this for his own benefit. He subconsciously wanted to pat Bennett's shoulder, but his hand passed through the other party's body. For a moment, he almost forgot that the two of them were projections. Bennett nodded and did not say anything. He would not be less grateful to Han Shao because of what he said. He had a rich experience and had long understood that a person's motive was not important. What was important was what they actually did. While the two of them were chatting, many representatives of the other civilizations also noticed Han Shao and looked at him with complicated emotions. In the venue, the Blue Star civilization was an out-and-out anomaly. Han Shao had a cooperative relationship with many of the civilizations present, and all the civilizations present knew that Han Shao had helped Blue Star join the association. They could not help but envy Blue Star's unique advantage. They had a beyond grade A-like Black Star as their guardian, and now they had become the headquarters of Floating Dragon. Why was this lousy planet so lucky? Was it really a place blessed by heroes? Jealousy was jealousy, but since they were able to sit here, it meant that they had the ability. The representatives of the civilizations present would not look down on Blue Star. Who asked them to have a beyond grade A? When a person reached the top, even his chickens and dogs would follow suit. They had no choice but to accept it. Not long after, everyone finally arrived. The chatter gradually became softer and softer until it disappeared. The entire venue was silent. At this moment, a star cluster director stood up and slowly spoke. His voice was spread throughout the venue through the nano-sized sound amplification device. "I'm very happy to see all my familiar friends again. Compared to the previous meeting, the number of people this time has not decreased. It seems like the security of the Shattered Star Ring has improved." Everyone had a cold expression and cursed in their hearts. There were too many things to complain about. This joke was not funny at all. Perhaps everyone has noticed that we have a new member. This director looked in the direction of Han Shao and the others and gave a simple introduction. Blue Star Civilization, Aquamarine Federation, Civilization Representative. Your Excellency Black Star. Everyone's gazes were cast over, and they all nodded in greeting. Han Shao waved his hands and looked around. His gaze landed on Cisco, who was sitting in the Star Pupil God Ray seat. He smiled in his heart and raised his hand to greet him. Psyker's face was expressionless. He didn't move at all, as if he hadn't seen anything. Your Excellency Black Star is an acquaintance of everyone, so I won't introduce you further. The director paused and said, "Since everyone is here, according to the rules, the meeting shall begin." The first topic next, the representatives of the various civilizations took turns to perform, raising proposals that they had prepared long ago. Most of them were about trade conflicts, border conflicts, planet ownership, diplomatic condemnation, and so on. The representatives of the civilizations present were all experts at talking. They argued for half a day for every topic, and in the end, most of them could only temporarily shelve the dispute. The process was long and tedious, but Bennett sat up straight and observed every segment seriously, learning from his experience. Han Shao was already in a daze, thinking about the true meaning of the universe and what to eat for dinner. After half a day, the people in front of them had finished speaking, and it was finally their turn. The director of the Amethyst Civilization smiled and reminded, Proposal CL 7984D66, submitted by the Blue Star Civilization, Representative, please make a brief statement. Bennett slowly stood up, took out the materials that he had prepared long ago, and started reading. He briefly explained the actions of the Avitan Souls extremists, and his voice echoed in the hall. Then, he looked at Cisco and said with a heavy tone, "We found an advanced psionic bomb in the spaceship of this group of extremists. Its power is enough to destroy the entire Blue Star. For such an advanced military weapon to appear in the hands of a group of extremists, we have reason to believe that these weapons came from the Star Pupil Protoss. Their actions were secretly instructed by the Star Pupil Protoss. We believe that you want to violate the Universal Treaty of Contact, 7th Revision, and destroy a civilization that is protected by the treaty. The sponsor of the Avitan Souls was the opponent of the Star Pupil Protoss, a star cluster civilization called Talos. However, Bennett insisted that the weapons were sponsored by the Star Pupil Protoss, and his goal was to make Cisco take the blame. Everyone present had a strange expression. They were all knowledgeable and knew that Cisco would not do such a thing. A surface civilization that had made an exception to join the association actually dared to slander another beyond grade A in their first meeting? Their guts were too big. It was good to have a beyond grade A at home. They could do whatever they wanted. The 7-star cluster directors exchanged glances, and 6 of them glanced at the 7th person. This 7th person was the director of the Talos civilization. The director of the Talos civilization looked at Cisco and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Representative of the Star Pupil Protoss, what do you have to say? This is slander." Cisco's face was calm. "I will not violate the treaty, and I have no reason to attack Blue Star. These extremists were not ordered by me." "Then, how do you explain this?" "According to my speculation, this is what happened. Not long ago, planet Avitan was attacked, and the evolution cube was stolen. In the end, it was snatched away by Black Star." As he spoke, Cisco coldly glared at Han Shao and said, "Due to the attack, a portion of the survivors of Avitan became extremists. In the eyes of the Star Pupil Protoss, the evolution cube is our national treasure. Black Star snatched away our national treasure, causing the extremists to transfer their hatred to him. Therefore, this matter is a private matter and has nothing to do with the Star Pupil Protoss. If Blue Star insists that I did it, please provide evidence." Han Shao chuckled and finally said, "The dead tell no tales. Do you want to clear your name with just a few words?" "Hee hee, the same goes for you. Since the dead tell no tales, you also want to slander me with a few unreasonable speculations, Cisco said coldly. The Talos director laughed and said, "Let's put this matter aside for now. Regardless of whether it was incited by the star pupil Protoss or not, these attackers are indeed your people, right, Cisco?" Cisco took a deep breath, nodded slowly, and said, "Although they are of the same race, but you don't have to say any more. The nature of the star pupil holy race is different from other civilizations. Your race should be highly united, but under your rule, an extreme hatred organization has appeared. This is the result of poor management." The Talos representative interrupted him. "This is our internal matter. I will start to clean up the Avitan souls and dismantle this extremist group as soon as possible. You have no right to interfere with other matters." Cisco's tone was stiff. "If you need, as a friendly neighbor, we can also send troops to help you eliminate the extremist group." "No need." Cisco was shocked. "Who doesn't know what you are trying to do? There are so many people watching, and you actually dare to say it out loud. You are too shameless." The Talos director laughed and did not mind. He returned to the main topic. "We will talk about your remedies later. Now we are talking about your responsibility. These extremists are of your race, and when they were about to attack, they still had the citizenship of the star pupil Protoss. According to my opinion, the star pupil Protoss is responsible for this matter. In reality, be it being of the same race or citizenship, these factors were not important in the galaxy where people moved frequently. However, the Talos director was purposely trying to make things difficult for the star pupil Protoss. He was not the only director who did so." "I think so too." The Amethyst director smiled and said. "Seconded." The other star cluster directors nodded. The Amethyst civilization spoke up for Blue Star because of Han Shao, while the other star cluster civilizations purely wanted to attack the star pupil Protoss. The star pupil Protoss had the support of the Arcane Church and was developing rapidly. They had the chance to become the 8th star cluster civilization in the Shattered Star Ring, so the others were not willing to share their benefits. Therefore, at this moment, they stood on the same side and used this as a pretext to make a fuss. The other representatives present were silent. Everyone knew that this was the 7 directors slandering one another. This situation was too rare, and no one was willing to interfere. At the end of the day, it was the star pupil Protoss' fault for wanting to blow up other people's planet. Of course, they would be targeted. Honestly speaking, if it were any of the civilizations present, if someone wanted to blow up their mother planet, they would also vent their anger on the other party for not keeping their mad dog on a leash. All of a sudden, Cisco seemed to have become the target of everyone's criticism. Bennett was shocked. He thought that he would at most argue with Cisco, but he did not expect so many people to speak up for them. He could not help but look at Han Shao. He had expected this. He knew that exposing this matter would give the other star cluster civilizations an opportunity to make a fuss. Furthermore, the Shattered Star Ring had long been divided up by the 7 star cluster civilizations, and they would definitely not be willing to share it with the newcomers. Therefore, even if he did not have any evidence, these directors would still speak up for him. These judges were not without a stand. Cisco's expression was ugly. It was not that he did not understand this logic, but he did not have the confidence to do so. After all, the other party was the victim, and he was indeed in the wrong. He could not help but hate the Avitan Souls organization. These B***stards did not care about causing trouble for the civilization at all and even made him their scapegoat. It was really better to let a piece of barbecued pork evolve than to let them evolve. "Then, how do you guys plan to settle this?" Cisco asked. "I think that you need to publicly apologize to Blue Star and give Blue Star some mental compensation," the Talos director said slowly. "Compensation and apology are impossible," Cisco said with a deep voice. "At most, I'll donate." Donations were also considered compensation, but the name was different, so the meaning was different. As the leader of the civilization, he was the image of the star pupil Protoss. He had to consider many aspects and could not publicly apologize for the private actions of an extremist organization, just like how Ghidorah would not apologize for the actions of Dark Star. Furthermore, Sisko was a beyond grade A, and doing so would cause him to lose a lot of prestige. Thus, he would not lower his head because of this. Bennett regained his senses. Under Han Zhao's signal, he braced himself and said, "We strongly condemn the actions of the star pupil Protoss and will not accept such an insincere outcome." "Then, there's no need to talk about it." Sisko's eyes were cold. He looked at Han Zhao deeply before suddenly going offline and leaving the venue. The star pupil Protoss had the support of the Arcane Church, and his status was high. The Civilization Conference had limited restrictions on him and could not force him to lower his head. However, Sisko could not do whatever he wanted, and it was not without losses. After this incident, it would be much more difficult for the star pupil Protoss to seek cooperation in the future. He had lost the evolution cube, and the support of the Arcane Church had also weakened. Thus, this incident was very disadvantageous for the development of the star pupil Protoss. Not to mention, the Talos civilization would definitely publicize this incident and attack the reputation of the star pupil Protoss, as well as weaken his reputation as a beyond grade A. In Sisko's eyes, the culprit of all this was Han Zhao. If not for this guy's determination to frame him, he would not have encountered such a situation. At this moment, Sisko's hostility toward Han Zhao increased by another level. Han Zhao's interface also had a notification that the favorability of the star pupil Protoss had decreased from -800 to -1250. Their relationship had changed from hostile to enemy. Sure enough, Sisko was furious. Han Zhao shook his head. Blue Star was his mother planet, and he could not swallow this insult. Anyway, Sisko and the Arcane Church would not give up on the evolution cube, so they were destined to be enemies. There was no harm in having a deeper hatred. If Blue Star was really bombed, Sisko would not apologize or compensate. He might even gloat. However, the battle of positions had nothing to do with right or wrong. Han Zhao did not feel that Sisko was in the wrong, and he did not care what methods he used. "I wonder what kind of counterattack he will make," Han Zhao pondered. Blue Star was protected by the peace treaty, so Sisko would not attack anyone else. If he wanted to counterattack, he would only target himself. Aesop had said that the Arcane Church would send people to deal with him, and since Sisko could locate him, he would definitely be one of them. Han Zhao made up his mind. He had the people in his base keep an eye on Sisko's whereabouts, which was equivalent to indirectly monitoring the movements of the Arcane Church. At the same time, on the mother planet of the star pupil Protoss, Sisko disconnected the connection to the meeting with an ugly expression. After a moment of silence, Sisko sent a message to the Arcane Church. "That matter. I agree." The Arcane Church had recently prepared to give him a mission. Sisko had originally been considering it, but now, he had made a decision. Sisko's cold expression was reflected on the communicator screen. "Black Star, you should stay in the flickering world and never come back." Chapter 828. Leaving halfway through the meeting showed that Psyker's actions were not very respectful to the members present. However, whether it was the 7-star cluster directors or the other members, they did not mind. Psyker was only using his actions to express his dissatisfaction when the star pupil holy race was publicly targeted. He would still be there in the next meeting. Since the main character had left, the proposal was temporarily shelved. Bennett sat down under the signal of the purple crystal director. The meeting continued, and the next proposal was brought up. The atmosphere in the meeting room became casual again. The subsequent proposals had nothing to do with him, so Han Xiao threw the remote projection into the backstage and went to browse the forums. After half a day, the first day of the meeting finally ended. Every time the Civilization Conference was held, it would usually take a few days to discuss the backlog of proposals. Han Xiao only planned to participate on the first day. He did not need to attend the next few days. Bennett was enough. Deactivating the remote projection, Han Xiao closed the forums and pondered. The star pupil Protoss was condemned by Blue Star. What happens next has nothing to do with Blue Star. Nothing actually happened, so they could not really do anything to Cisco. Han Xiao did not expect the star pupil Protoss to compensate or donate money. Blue Star's influence was too small. Even if they condemned the other party, Cisco would not feel anything. However, after this matter was brought up, Cisco did not face difficulties from Blue Star but from the Talos civilization. The Talos civilization had secretly funded the Avitan souls so that they could cause trouble for the star pupil holy race. Although they did not order the Avitan souls to attack planet Aquamarine, this unexpected situation was in line with their interests, and they could use this opportunity to cause trouble. Han Xiao asked Bennett to condemn the other party to provide an excuse for the Talos civilization. The Talos civilization understood this tacit understanding. They had wanted to deal with the star pupil Protoss for a long time, and they could appease Han Xiao by standing up for Blue Star. Therefore, Blue Star did not need to worry about what happened after that. He only needed to watch the Talos civilization operate from the sidelines. Han Xiao contacted Ames and asked her about Floating Dragon. The two of them chatted on the phone for half an hour before hanging up. Walking in front of the 3D star map, Han Xiao looked up at the image of the Gerar star cluster. There was only a very small green area that had been explored so far. It was shaped like two toothpicks stuck in a green ball. It was the two long-distance passages that were under construction and the border star system that was being explored. There are still 3 months before Hardaway's task force can build a long-distance stargate. Han Xiao thought to himself as he rubbed his chin. According to his exploration plan, the first stage would be for the Special Task Force to arrive at the eastern part of the Gerar star cluster's 2D star map. With his understanding of the Gerar star cluster, there should not be any disturbances like the Great Cosmos Core in the next 3 months. It should be a peaceful exploration period, and they should be able to explore 80% of the border star systems. Time was like quicksand in one's hand. It slipped through the gaps between one's fingers. 3 months later, on the mother planet of the Red Empire, in the ruler's office, Urnrel sat with her back as straight as a javelin. She held a report in her hand and was reprimanding a trembling high-ranking official in front of her. Her tone was solemn. The Radiant Federation is acting sneakily and infiltrating our territory. How did you deal with it? Are you just going to watch and not do anything? I only told you to be conservative, not to retreat. Come up with a plan right now. Let me think. This official wiped his sweat and said with difficulty. Urnrel's eyes were serious. The exploration of the flickering world had already been going on for a few months, and the Radiant Federation had already begun to act. At the same time, they were pressuring the dynasty from all aspects, preparing to eat away at the dynasty's benefits while the dynasty was focused on exploring the new star field. This was only the beginning. In the future, when the dynasty invested more resources and manpower into the exploration, the Radiant Federation would definitely become even more aggressive and make the dynasty's situation even more difficult. While all of this was within Urnrel's expectations, it was still unavoidable. The Radiant Federation was a universal civilization on the same level, and the dynasty would not be able to get the best of both worlds. If they wanted to gain something, they would have to pay a certain price. Urnrel was already mentally prepared for this. Beep beep. This time, the internal line suddenly rang. Your Excellency, the Chief Commander of the Exploration Army, Tarakov is on the line. Urianril's eyes moved slightly, and she waved her hand to get the official to leave. This official immediately felt as though he had been granted amnesty and hurriedly left the ruler's office, leaving only Urianril in the room. Connect. Urianril nodded. The next moment, Tarakov's remote figure appeared in the room and saluted Urianril. Tarakov, how is the exploration of the flickering world going? The exploration of the flickering world was the focus of the Red Empire's current strategy. Urianril was extremely concerned about the exploration and would listen to a report every once in a while. The information has already been sent to you. Let me explain the current situation to you. Tarakov opened his mouth and explained. While listening to the report, Urianril looked at the information and nodded. All in all, in the 3-star clusters of Renault, Crown, and Geru, the dynasty's exploration army and Klent's exploration team are doing well. On the other hand, the Black Star Corps' exploration team, that chose the Geru star cluster, has made great progress in the past 4 months. They have discovered a large number of rich resource planets, and even took over the territory of a local organization, saving us a lot of effort. Furthermore, the Black Star Corps does not care about their own losses and is currently building long-distance stargates to make it more convenient for the exploration team, Tarakov said. Not bad, a reliable ally. Urianril put down the information, and a look of satisfaction flashed through her eyes. Because there was a comparison, she was very satisfied with Han Zhao's efficiency. The Black Star Corps is an ally worth nurturing. Increase the support for them. Although Tarakov seemed to have received some benefits and was always putting in good words for the Black Star Corps, as long as the work was done well, Urianril would not be bothered by the details. Other than that, there's something else that needs to be reported. Tarakov's tone suddenly turned serious. We have discovered traces of suspected stowaways. The stowaways that he was talking about were organizations that had secretly passed through the desolate universe belt and headed to the flickering world without the dynasty's permission. Urianril narrowed her eyes. Are you sure they are not natives? Tarakov shook his head. Although there aren't many clues, our troops stationed in the desolate universe belt of the flickering world have discovered high warp speed hyperdrive folds left behind by an unknown fleet. Clearly, they have reached the technological standard of a star cluster civilization. These stowaways will most likely arrive in the flickering world in a while. No, there might have already been people who arrived in the flickering world before them but were not discovered by us. As expected, Urianril said calmly, the Radiant Federation, the Arcane Church, and those supercluster civilizations still made their move. I think that they will take a detour to avoid the 3-star clusters that we explored in the first phase, Tarakov said. They will explore the star clusters in the depths of the star field before us and secretly take over our star field to avoid meeting us. You're right. Send out troops to search the desolate universe belt between the shattered star ring and the flickering world, Urianril said slowly. Destroy the stargates that the enemy has secretly built. These stowaways had sent out vanguards to build their own secret stargates in the flickering world. This way they would be able to quickly transport a large number of troops. Most of these stargates would be hidden in the vast desolate universe belt between the 2-star field. This was the reason why the Red Empire prohibited other organizations from privately using stargates to connect to the flickering world. The most effective way to deal with the stowaways was to destroy the secret stargates and let the dynasty firmly control the stargate. Only by ensuring the uniqueness of the stargate could they maximize the dynasty's benefit. However, Tarakov shook his head. We need more manpower. I know. Urianril nodded. I will send more dynasty troops to the flickering world. It's time for the second batch of dynasty allies to move as well. At the same time, a stowaway fleet of the Arcane Church arrived at the border of the flickering world. We're finally here. Contact the team. Have they chosen a location in the desolate universe belt? Reporting, Captain. They're already in position. They're just waiting for us. Only 2 stargates could form a fast passage. The stowaway fleet would usually split up and choose a location for the secret stargate in the desolate universe belt. This was the entrance. The fleet that came to the flickering world was responsible for building the exit. Very good. Don't be discovered by the Red Empire's space monitoring buoys. We'll go around the Dawn star cluster and build a stargate in the desolate universe belt around the Geras star cluster. The Arcane Church also wanted to get their hands on the flickering world, but this was a long-term project, and they were not in a hurry. In comparison, the Arcane Church was more interested in the evolution cube. They had built a secret stargate near the Geras star cluster to make it easier to station troops. With a stargate, it would be easier to send in Beyond Grade as. After all, Beyond Grade as would not be willing to spend a few months slowly passing through the desolate universe belt. Black Star had already proven how difficult it was to deal with, and the Arcane Church had mobilized more than 1 or 2 Beyond Grade as this time. Of course, the 3 universal civilizations were keeping an eye on each other's Beyond Grade as. Once there was any abnormal movement, they would be alerted. If they wanted to make a Beyond Grade as move stealthily, they would need a reason to confuse others. I've been staying up late recently, so I'm not feeling very well. I'll write less today to rest up and smooth out my thoughts. P.S. Lu Sun said it well. If people are killed, they will die. If they don't vote, their monthly votes will expire. It's the last day of the month. Just a small amount of monthly votes is enough. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.